everybody, it's Romania Black, and trick or treat. Or when this is on YouTube, it'll be after Halloween. But yeah, I was gonna go and do a Girlfriend of Steel, the playthrough this week, but then I can't get it to work on my computer. I have an old PC it won't work on, and I can't find a version on my Mac. So I was like, darn it. So I'm gonna have to tell Patreon that I'm gonna do something different in place of it. But I decided, I was like, well, I'm gonna be out of town next weekend for work. I might as well just go ahead and watch the third rebuild. I just watched the second one last weekend, so why not watch this one this weekend? So that's what I'm doing. So it's a little bit different than what the schedule entailed, so I hope y'all are okay with that. But I was like, I really want to watch the third rebuild now, especially after that preview of Kaworu coming down and just... And to be honest, we've talked a lot in the comments about this, but I've liked the rebuilds so far. I really have. I've really enjoyed them. They are something very different, but I do feel like I want to, and a lot of people are like, well, you can't really compare them to the old ones. And I think if you want to not make yourself stress out, that's the way to go. But me being me, I'm like, no, I've got, that comparison's just on my brain, so I gotta talk about it. But so there are elements I've kind of had issues with the rebuilds, but overall, I think the good outweighs the parts I have criticism with. So I do like that a lot. And so I am really excited. We have 2 films left. We have this one, and then we have Thrice Upon a Time. And Thrice Upon a Time is the one that most recently came out, right? And Thrice Upon a Time is 3.0 plus 1. Okay. And then this one is, this version actually, Anthony, y'all can thank Anthony from Patreon because they are amazing. And so I had someone way back when I was doing the original series, they were like, oh, when you get to the third rebuild, there's the theatrical cut, which is 3.0. There is the Blu-ray edition that's 3.33, and then there is the Blu-ray that came out that had color corrections that's 3.333, and I was like, oh my god. And so Anthony, the one that I'm watching right now, is 3.333. So it's the good version. So y'all can thank Anthony in the comments for giving the right version, right? And so this one is You Cannot Redo. All right. So, I liked we have You Are Not Alone, You Cannot Advance, You Cannot Redo, which is funny because this series kind of is a redoing of sorts. Or maybe not! I don't know! We'll see. It branched out a lot from the last movie. The first movie was kind of like more of a retread, more of a soft reboot that was starting to branch away, and then the second one branched away quite a bit. And so this one, I'm like, are we just going to go off the walls? It's not as long as the second one. It's only an hour and a half, which still... It's kind of the same length as the first rebuild. An hour and a half is enough. And 2 hours was just like, oh my god. So it's an hour and a half, hour and 35 minutes. But I do have some comments about the second rebuild before we begin. So, I do have from Nicholas, we were talking in the Discord, but apparently the song that plays as Asuka is attacked, like the little sing-songy mix-matched song, is actually a school song in Japan, a common school song that talks about meeting up again after summer ends. And I'm like, oh, that's quite fitting then, that Asuka's getting wrecked with this cutesy school song about how they'll meet up again after summer ends. Okay. That seems oddly fitting, actually. And then Viper Leone talks about how in the first rebuild, the plot point of Gendo pushing Rei and Shinji together, it now makes even more sense with Ritsuko giving Shinji the card to give Rei to help them connect even further. That there's an added element of that, like, oh, if they were trying to get them together, Ritsuko's playing a part in it, it makes that scene have a little bit more weight to him. But I also think, not only Viper Leone, but others have talked about how Gendo has a much bigger presence in the rebuilds, which he does, very much. He gets more character development, and I'm a little bit torn about that, because on the one hand, I feel like I complained in the original series because he was so mysterious. I was like, oh, I really hope we get some Gendo perspective and get some this. And the rebuilds are doing that for us, but now it's like, you know, be careful what you wish for. Now I'm like, do I like this or do I like the mysterious Gendo? Which I do think I like it. I like the dinner scene from the last rebuild. It's so good. It's one of my favorites. But when he sees Yui and she's like, you need to take care of Shinji, and Gendo's a coward and he can't do it. It's like, oof. It's just like if Shinji kept running away, he would become like Gendo. And it's like, oh my gosh. But also, we'll talk about Shinji. Nicholas also brought up the fact that the movie, the titles in comparison, the theatrical versions were always like the 0.0 version, and then the DVD and Blu-ray were like the 0.11, 0.22, 0.233 versions, and then the color corrections were the extra 3 on this one. But Alexander Q pointed out, and several people noted, that Shinji is a little bit different in the rebuilds. He's more openly compassionate, and he's more positive. Yeah, he's more positive and has like more emotions. He's not quite as detached as he is in the original. And you can take that either way, right? You can either enjoy that Shinji has a little bit more compassion and go get him attitude, or you could view it as what made Shinji kind of a unique protagonist is how detached he was. I'm kind of like in the middle. I like it both ways. I think for the rebuilds, he has to be like this. If Shinji was, in the original series, him being detached and very socially withdrawn, it works because you have 26 episodes to show a character arc with Shinji and to go with him from one point to the end. So it works in the original series in End of Evangelion, whereas in the rebuilds, you need him to be a little bit more upbeat and positive because you only have so much time to tell this story. And if he was detached the whole time, then your audience may not be as invested in his character, especially in the second rebuild when he's got the whole thing with Rei going on and he has to like go into beast mode at the end, kind of like Mari, and go after Rei. So you need him to have those certain character beats for it to work. And so I think it does. I like that a lot. Akira talked about how Ano actually, I was like, why did they change Asuka's name? Like, what was the point? And so Ano apparently in an interview was like, we just wanted to be different. I was like, okay, fine. It's like the most simple reason. He's like, I just felt like it. Okay, sure. Not tied down to Asuka's last name. Good to know. But actually Asuka's last name and her new name are both names of like aircraft carriers. So like Mari and Rei are actually based on naval battleships. And then Shikimari means it's a sky aircraft carrier that also means mothership. And I kind of like that. I kind of like her name change now that I know the meaning of it because it ties, and Akira talked about this too, it ties to Asuka's relationship with her mother more, which the rebuild didn't really discuss at all. So maybe we're going to get into that in this third film. That'd be great because you give her this cool new last name that has a reference to her mom's relationship with her, but we've not explored that yet. So I'm curious to see what we do with it. And then Christopher Peterson finally talked about the two new terms that we get. Nebuchadnezzar is a biblical king. Listed in the Bible. And then Golgotha, I knew Golgotha from somewhere. I was like, where have I heard Golgotha? And it is the hill in which Jesus was crucified. Yeah. So those are my comments about Rebuilds 1 and the Patreon ones for 2. I'm sure that with Thrice Upon a Time and next week, I will have many more comments about this film and the second rebuild from YouTube. So that's exciting. But I decided I wanted to dress up like Sahakuel. Because I loved the redesign they did on the angel for that one. So this was the closest outfit I had that had like the pattern looks kind of like Sahakuel's. And I was like, I wanted to dress up as them. I did Ramiel for 2.22 and so I felt like being an angel for this one. So what angel will I be for Thrice Upon a Time? Who knows? But yeah, I'm really excited to dive into this this movie. Pulling up the file, it's really widescreen. It's like super widescreen. The other ones have been like a box. This one like takes up almost my whole screen. So having it fit over here is going to be rather interesting. But yeah, it's a widescreen version, so I'm like, this is interesting. But yeah, I'm excited. I don't know what's going to happen, but especially now that we've diverted so far from the main story and we're already into like End of Evangelion territory, how are we going to cover episode 22 or 24? Episode 24 is like a pivotal episode in the series, but this has changed so much leading up to it. I'm like, are we going to get Kaworu and Shinji meeting? How we doing that? What's happening? Shinji's stuck with Rei right now in End of Evangelion land. So what do we do with that? So yeah, we'll find out. But I hope y'all are excited as I am because I am ready to go. So we are going to start Neon Genesis Evangelion Rebuild 3.333. You cannot redo! And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Huh. So this movie was interesting. The thing about it is, and I've talked to some other people in the comments about it, when you try to view the film as its own thing, I think that can be both good and bad. And so I think you almost need to look at it in comparison with the original series, only because I think if this were a standalone movie and you had no prior knowledge to the original series and it was just a standalone movie that was building off of the other two, I don't know if I would have liked it as much, honestly. I think that knowing what I do about the original series and End of Evangelion, I like it more. But there's some parts in this movie that I think are the best so far out of the entire series. There's some parts of this movie, the good stuff, I'm like, it's some of the better stuff in the whole Rebuild series so far, and I like it the most. And then there's the frustrating. I hesitate to say bad, because I don't necessarily think it's bad things. They're just frustrating things. And I'm like, why are you doing this? And then there's the befuddling stuff. There's a lot of befuddling stuff in this movie that I was like, why did we do that? Why did we make that choice? I'm so curious. Like, there's stuff that it seems like Anno tries to correct in this movie and alter from the original, and there are some decisions made that I'm like, yes, that makes much more sense. I'm glad we did that. And then there's some things I really like development-wise. There's some things that make sense. There's some things that are really frustrating, especially with Shinji and Kaworu in this, as much as I love Shinji and Kaworu. And then, obviously, there's a few things like, let me just go ahead and say the befuddling thing. The preview, and I don't want you all to tell me the answer to this, because if they're actually shots from Thrice Upon a Time, I'll be okay with that. But they showed us in the preview from the end of Rebuild 2.22, they showed us an image of Kaji with a gun. They showed us Fuyu and Gendo on a mountain. They showed us Rei with all the baby Reis. They showed us Mari in the same area as Rei and all the baby Reis. And I'm like, none of it was in this movie. Not at all. I just watched it. I know I didn't see it. Kaji wasn't in here at all. The one guy just mentioned Kaji. So I was like, I feel like maybe the imagery there might be in Thrice Upon a Time. Maybe. So I'm going to say that the 2.22 preview material is not in this film, which is kind of frustrating, but I'll put it in befuddling because I'm more befuddled by it. I'm like, why would you put it in the preview for 3.33 when it's not even in there? It's going to be in the one after that. And they didn't even, so I'm so curious. I'm like, it's almost like a bait and switch. Like, you expect to see some of this stuff, and then when you get to it, you're like, well, I felt like Zuko in Avatar, where he's like got the stroller. He's like, where is it? Where's the rest of it? Unless there's like some kind of crazy director's cut that I'm not seeing. But if it's in Thrice Upon a Time, then I'm not gonna worry about it. That's what I'm assuming so far. I'm assuming that the stuff that was in that preview is in Thrice Upon a Time. I'm just befuddled that you'd show it for a movie that you don't even feature it in. It seems like a weird decision. But yeah, so this film, man, again, the best thing, again, the sound design. If there is any amazing thing about this film, it's like, I want to go listen to the score now. When I get done with all of them, I want to go listen to the score and have it epically playing in the background as I grade papers and like just light Yagami them away. But yeah, so the soundtrack is amazing. And the way that it dips and turns, like there was a moment where you realize that maybe Shinji's making a bad decision, and there's like a sour note let's play like on the violin. It's like a sour note, and it's like, ooh, you instantly know something bad's gonna happen. Great. The sounds of the angels, great. The piano, mwah. It's so funny. I'm glad that I'm watching and reading things that are extras that are being incorporated into the rebuilds. In the last rebuild, there we were joking in the comments that the fan service from the audio drama that they said was a joke. They're like, what if we had all this gratuitous fan service and he's like see-through plug suits and all this stuff? Ha ha ha. And then we go to rebuild 2.22 and they're there, only it's not a joke. It's being played serious, and we're like, oh no. they listened to the audio drama, the staff did writing the script, but they didn't take the memo. They didn't get the joke. Here, the episode 24 script, the whole piano deal, I'm so on board. That part, as soon as I heard that piano, I was like, oh, you are shitting. You are kidding me. You are joking. We're going to take that bit from episode 24, the script, the draft, and we're going to incorporate it into this. Okay. I'm here for it. I almost thought they were going to kiss. I will get to that scene, but I thought Kaworu and Shinji were going to kiss. I was really close to thinking it. I was like, is that going to happen? Is this real life? Is this going to happen? I really thought it was going to happen, and it did not, but it was so close. I was like, we jumped the shark at that point. You're already like checking off my fan service. My fan service boxes are a lot different with Neon Genesis than I think most of the viewers of this series. My fanship box is like the piano duets with Kaworu and Shinji, and Fuyu playing shogi with Shinji, and like those types of things are my fan service for characters. Like, I don't care about a boober, crotch shot, whatever, get out of here. I those character moments, that's my fan service. And so as far as that goes, this movie delivered on that in spades. And there's some really cool things that they do with Shinji and Kaworu in here that I like. But we need to talk about it. Yeah, I just... The fan service wasn't as bad in this movie. It was toned down. I'm not going to put it up here under good, because there still was some. I'm like, I don't need to see Asuka's crotch, like, for days. Don't need to see it. But, like, every vantage point of her is just, like, her abdomen and below. And I'm like, show me her face, damn it. Like, I know it might get boring to see her face all the time, but I don't need to see her butt. Please don't. But, yeah, so... that part, like, that part was there prevalently. Like, she was in the same domineering pose throughout the entire, every moment she was in with Shinji, pretty much. Which, you know, you see it the first time in episode 7, and it's fine, but we don't really see it in the original series anytime after that, because it's not needed. And here, they just kind of, like, did it every single opportunity that they got. So there was that, and then there was, like, one moment towards the end where, like, Mara's boobs are jiggling, and I was like, I don't need to see that. So, yeah. Whatever. But anyway, so this movie, let's just dive. We just jump right in. I think the most frustrating part for me, for the first part, is that we go through, like, there's 30 minutes of the opening with no reference to the last movie. Which I know some people probably will like that. Some people are probably like, oh, well, the movie is not spoon feeding it. The movie does not spoon feed us much of anything, which I guess is a good thing. But the thing of it is, when you're doing something entirely new, because this is going off in a whole new venture, and I really like it for a lot of reasons, I did think that in that 30 minutes of opening, like when Shinji was being wheeled up to Masato, and then when he was being wheeled up to them, I felt like there should have been like a flashback or like an image or some kind of visual to show us, like, okay, we're back from the last movie, like to show him and Rei like hugging each other, or to show like them extracting him, or to show something leading up to him being in the coffin, something leading up to that, something to give us a visual idea, because they don't even really explain that in this movie, which is fine. But I was left wanting to know more. I wanted to go back to the third impact when it was all happening and, like, fill in the gaps, right? I wanted to do that. And this movie does not do that for you. It's like, no, we're not going to show you that. But I was like, the last movie was 2 hours. This is only an hour and a half. You could have played around and did it. You could have had time to do that, right? Instead, we spent like a good 5 minutes establishing this CGI, like them breaking away the satellite and everything, and getting the two of them ready to go down to face the angel. So one thing I do like as we start out this opening is Asuka and Mari's dynamic. I was really worried what that was going to be like, right? I was really worried what that was going to be like, that because in the last movie, Mari was kind of just like Asuka on steroids. She was just kind of like the new Asuka, right? And I felt bad for Asuka in the last movie because I felt like she kind of got the shaft and they had to introduce Mari. She kind of inserted herself into the movie at the expense of Asuka. And I really like that both of them work together in this. I like that they're a duo. It's not expected. It's something that I didn't think would work, but it surprisingly does. And I like that it seems like Mari, she takes on a more tactical, strategic role in this movie. Like when the last rebuild, I was like, I expected Mari to be more of the strategist. And she is in this movie. She's the one kind of the four eyes girl, the four eyes strategist. She's the one that is kind of planning things out and getting things organized, and then Asuka's gung-ho go in there. And it really works because, and like I talked about this in the reaction, Mari is very blunt and communicates. Mari is not withdrawn. She's very communicative. She likes to talk. She talks a little too much towards the end there. We'll talk about that. But she talks a lot and she communicates really well. That's kind of like she like Toji are kind of outliers amongst all of the other EVA pilots, which really honestly in the rebuilds, the EVA pilots, because we don't have the time that we do in the original show, like where's Asuka's trauma? Doesn't have it. Like that. Just I am a little bit befuddled that Asuka, there is no mother relationship or trauma that is established. None whatsoever. We get the photo that Fuyu-chan has. We'll talk about that photograph. We get that, and I feel like if you're a Neon Genesis fan, you're like, but there's no, like, nothing's talked about with Asuka's relationship with her mom in this movie because we don't have time, and because it's not really needed. It's not needed. Asuka, it's kind of a detriment to it. It's befuddling. It's kind of a detriment because that whole relationship with her mom and her backstory, it helps to explain her character more. But again, as many of you pointed out, these movies, especially this movie, I feel like this movie is definitely meant for Neon Genesis fans and not a new audience. I feel like some of the more frustrating and befuddling decisions that we'll talk about would really be of detriment if you were a first-time viewer. If you watched the first rebuild and the second rebuild and you're like, okay, I'll go see the third one, you'd probably be like, what the hell is going on? Right? Because there's a lot of information that is not given to us in this movie because they assume you already know it. They assume you already know that Rey's a clone. Why do you need this elaborated on? So there's some things that they just assume you as the audience already know. And so we don't need to explain it. And Asuka's mother relationship is something that they assume the audience already knows about Asuka. So why do we need to dwell on it, right? The one thing I do like about this movie, in comparison to the first, because I would say, I don't know. I almost really like this. I'm torn because I still think the first rebuild is probably my least favorite of the three because it's so much of a retreading of ground we've already covered. I think the first one, as much as I love Ramiel is best girl in that movie. She's the best part about it. But I do think the first rebuild is probably my least favorite. With this one, I do think the second one is endearing to me, even though I have a lot of issues with it. The second one is endearing. The fan service is probably my least favorite part about it, but there's a lot of things in the second one I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. This third one, it's probably my second favorite because the parts that are frustrating and befuddling, I'm like, The good stuff, though, I'm very torn because I feel like the second and third one for me right now are almost an equal footing for very different reasons. But it's all new ground. That is probably what I like most about this movie is that Anno said, no, we're going to do something totally different. It's almost kind of like, but then I don't know because it's like, it's almost, since we're doing this alternate timeline, it seems, since we're doing this like alternate timeline, it's almost as if End of Evangelion isn't even going to happen because it's happening within these three movies. I feel like Thrice Upon Time is just going to be an extension of it because we still have not finished Gendo's plan. We'll talk about that when we get to it. But I feel like End of Evangelion has been like split apart and incorporated into these three movies, 2 and 3 and Thrice Upon a Time. And it's been merged in with episode 24 and all that. And it's kind of like, okay, what do we do with that? And so it's all new ground. It's pretty much at this point, we're not following the original series. We're not following End of Evangelion. We're on total new ground, exploring new things. Okay. And I really like that about it. I'm like, okay, this is all new Evangelion content. But it is, I don't know. It's not even befuddling or frustrating. It's just interesting that they assume you know things from watching the original series in End of Evangelion. You don't need it re-explained. And that works. I'm fine with that. It's okay. But yeah, we have this opening shot here where they're just getting ready, and they use a lot of jargon and science fiction terminology and talking about them commencing the rotation, blah, blah, blah. They're getting everything ready. They're setting everything up. They're prepping you for Asuka and Mari working together, which is interesting. And they have them all in their special little ships that are in outer space orbiting. Okay. And they're getting all that ready for us. And so commencing the operation. I want to go down here because this first part is, I was so dumbstruck. Like, okay, so they're on course with the target. And so interesting. And the target is down there and they're confirming. I'm trying to see what it is. It looks like it's down there by the geofront. Okay. So 2-. And so it says that the Unit 8 is lacking altitude, so it can only assist you in the 96 seconds until reentry. Okay, so Mari is, so we have the O2 unit, which is Asuka. And we have the O8 unit, which is Mari. Okay, which seems like they've hijacked. It seems like they've hijacked some, like they hijacked the O8 unit to make the EVA, because Rey in this one is the O9, right? We jump around numbers quite a bit. So I'm just going to put down here the EVA units. So OO is out of commission. O1 is the core of the ship that Masato and them are on. It's the core of it now, which is interesting. O2 is with Asuka. O3, which was, oh god, O3 was the unit that was Toji and them. It's gone. O4 is gone. O5 was the one that Mari was originally in. It's gone. O6 was the one that Kaworu was in, that merged, that basically helped save Lilith along with the OO unit. It's gone. And so then we have O7. We don't know what happened with O7. I'm assuming it was destroyed. O8 is Mari. O9 is Rey. 10, 11, and 12, we don't know what happened to them. They're gone. And then 13 is the one that Kaworu and Shinji are in. Which is kind of fun, because it's like originally the 13th angel. What was there? There was series 8 through 12, wasn't it? So yeah, there was the ones 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and there was like the other ones that all circled around Asuka and End of Evangelion. Now the 13th one, and it's the dual one. I was like, we're getting really into like a real mech situation, like Gundam or Voltron or something, where you have like multiple people in a cockpit, which, as we find out, may not be a good thing. Maybe there's a reason that design is not replicated by the end of this, but we'll talk about all that. But yeah, so it's interesting that it seems like they grabbed this unit and Rey's in the O9 unit. The other ones are all just either have been destroyed over the past 14 years, which is, I think, what has happened. They, like, 7 and then 10 through 12 have been destroyed over the last 14 years. And then this is what we're left with. So it's interesting. It's a fun time. But yeah, this first part, it was really interesting. Okay, the befuddling. Asuka's suit. Okay, repair Asuka's suit. Now that I think about it, though, now that I actually write it up here, maybe the reason that Asuka's suit is so banged up in there is because they've been fighting the angels. And so maybe they've been fighting the angels and her suit's just got ripped and it's just like a quick fix. Maybe that's it. And so it's just a quick temporary fix until she gets a new suit. Because she seems to have a new one, I think, on when they go and battle at the end. So, okay, that's fine. That's cool. And so they're like, they basically have everything set up, and then there's all of these shockwaves detected and everything. And then when I heard the meow meow, I was like, that sounds like Mari. And then we realized that Mari's like out to the side, like giving Asuka some backup. And so a troublesome bunch of little angels. There's like little angels everywhere. MK4. Oh, okay. So the MK4. So we established that the MK4 then, these are all from the 4th unit that was hijacked. Okay, that disappeared, right? In the series, they are little angels now. They've been converted into angels. Okay. All right, that makes sense. That makes sense. And they're trying to recover Shinji and get him back, right? They're trying to locate him in the midst of all this. And so then, yeah, these little angels getting her. I do like Asuka's eye patch. Her eye patch being like that she's had, which I think that was from the assault in the last movie, is that's why she's networking 4 eyes. That's why she calls her. That she's like, you're annoying as hell. I will say, Asuka, one thing I do like is that the animation and Asuka in her battle, they make Asuka look really good. I like that a lot. I feel like Asuka she kind of gets a little bit of redemption in this movie because she gets to do things, which is fun. And again, I like her and Mari's personality because Mari calling her princess. And Mari is just kind of like yandere and just here for a good time and to see what all happens. But I like that her and Asuka have a pretty good dynamic. They can actually work well together. And they're both kind of hot-headed, but it somehow gels, right? So, how Shinji ended up in the coffin... How Shinji ended up in the coffin there is rather interesting. Yeah. So they find the target. How did Shinji end up in the coffin? We don't know. Is that explained? So Shinji extracted from the black coffin. Like, how does that even work? How did he get separated from Rei from it? We'll talk about this. Okay. But yeah, so they go after this giant coffin thing and get all that. The animation's beautiful. I want to get a shot of Asuka actually looking like that because that's a really good picture of her. Yeah, that's a great shot. So, but yeah, Asuka looks great. Like, they have the film and stuff. The film comes out of the coffin, which is kind of cool. And I thought that was interesting. She says, do something, idiot Shinji, which we find out later, Shinji is inside of the coffin. So when she says to do something, it manages to like help neutralize the angel, and she's able to like bust through it, right? And destroy the angel part of it and get Shinji out, right? And then of course we have the big rainbow, the cross and everything. Yeah, and then she looks up. I was trying to see. Yeah, there's an eye inside of it, right? But is that Shinji's? Isn't it? Or was that the angel? Or that's so confusing. Yeah, it's like, what was it even? No, and then it falls down and shoots like a star, right? So that wasn't Shinji. But then he says, welcome back, Shinji. That part's so confusing. I'm like, so was Shinji inside the coffin? Did it jettison down to Earth? Was it extracted from it? Kaworu's like sitting up here waiting for him. I've been waiting for you. What? Why? What? And then we see Shinji like getting extracted from, he's in the iron lung. Just, what, but you just, so yeah. So, okay. If we're thinking of this right, we find out later on in the film that Shinji and Rei were merged. They were merged together during the cause of the third impact. Kaworu came down with the lances, put them into Shinji and Rei that had combined kind of with Lilith, right? To stop the third impact. And so Rei was managed to be extracted. I'm guessing that so NERV got Rei back and they extracted her. Why couldn't they extract Shinji when they extracted Rei? Why not? And then Masato and them got Shinji back on their side. That part kind of makes sense. But then I'm like, why did it take 14 years to do it? So I like the time skip. I like the idea of the time skip. Like, that part is fun. I like it. I think it's cool. But the whole that we don't get enough info on post third impact to when Shinji is retrieved. We don't get enough info on that in this movie. They really just jump around and they don't give us any answers. And then Kaworu, when he takes Shinji to where the third impact happened and explains kind of, you know, what the situation was, we get an idea of what was going on. But like all the little minute details, like all the stuff about like what did Masato and where did they go, how they developed the ship, they took the O1 unit with them. Well, that was from the site with Lilith and all that. How does that work? So it's just, there's so much information the movie just does not feel the need to tell you, and you'll just fill in the gaps, which is fine to an extent, but I feel like I wanted to know more. And I felt like, I'm like, you're making me fill in a lot of gaps, and my brain needs some help. So I was just kind of like, I wanted more explanation. Like I thought that we'd get like, you know, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes where we do like some flashbacks and show us like building up to all this. Nope, not at all. You don't get to know that. And so instead there's Shinji inside the lung thing, the black lung, right? That he's been extracted from. Okay, so one thing that is really cool is with the time skip that we have Suzuhara. We have Toji's sister. She was so pretty. I was like, who is she? She's really pretty. Usually they don't make characters look that cute and stuff unless they're an important character. She's Toji's sister. And so she becomes like a medic on there. And then so they say BM3, right? They say BM3. Like, is he a clone? Is Shinji a clone? And they say S. Akari. I like the question marks on his foot. Like, maybe this is Shinji. Like, I'm going to take a picture of that. I'm like, I like that they're just like, maybe it's Shinji. Who knows? We don't know. But yeah, like, what the hell? And so he wakes up and they say, what does they say? Experimental BM3. Like, he's opened his eyes. Okay, do you understand what I'm saying? And she is really pretty. She does look like, she looks like Toji a bit. And he asks where he is. And they have like just the guns on him. I was like, it's very interesting how untrusting they are of Shinji in this movie. That they're like, nope. And it makes sense because they think he's working with NERV still. And he's like, wasn't I saving Ayanami? And they said his memory seems to be intact. Okay. And I do like, she's like, do you know who this person is? And she shows her himself and he's like, it's me. Mm-hmm. He can recognize himself. Okay. But he has that collar on, yeah. And so then we go up to this bridge, right? Where everything is all business. It is just all business. Everybody is just doing their jobs, getting things ready on the ship. And I like that we get it from Shinji's perspective of being like, what the hell is going on? Like, we the audience are as confused with Shinji, right? So I will say one of the frustrating things about the film is that Shinji and the audience are equally in the dark. And we find out some things, but again, this movie needed 20 more minutes. This movie needed 20 more minutes to go back. It needed like 2.22 to go back and explain like how we got here and to give us more with that. And it tries to be super mysterious and ambiguous, but I almost feel like this movie series as a whole hasn't been, its tone has not been that mysterious ambiguousness that the first film had, that the original series had. And even the original series, when it was mysterious and ambiguous, it gave you something that you could like interpret for yourself. Here, there's nothing to interpret because we don't get anything. Like, why did Ritsuko cut her hair? I was waiting for a moment where Masato, like we saw a moment of Masato post third impact, like lamenting about Shinji and like having a dialogue with Ritsuko, like a scene with Ritsuko where they talk about it, right? I was waiting for that. She doesn't acknowledge Kaji. Like this one guy acknowledges Kaji that we don't even know his name. Like, but she doesn't acknowledge Kaji. She doesn't have a conversation with Ritsuko. It's all business. And I felt like this movie needed some more connection in terms of that to help the audience feel like we understand why everybody is so pissed. I mean, it makes sense why they're pissed off at Shinji because the world is a living hellscape. It makes sense why they're mad at him and they don't trust him because they're like, you caused this. But I felt like we just need more, and I'll probably write that up here in a minute. But yeah, Shinji's just like, what the hell? Like, what's going on? And like, we've brought specimen BM3. Okay. And they ask him to be released, and he's like, okay. And Masato can't even look at him. Like, she's just so, like, just has closed herself off from him. And Shinji's like, I don't understand what's going on. He's like, what's happening? And then he realizes, like, and everybody's just, everyone, and I guess there is Hyuga. Okay, there is Hyuga. He is here. It's just 14 years have passed, and they're older. And they're just looking at him with such contempt. Such contempt. Like, they can't stand him. And this girl, I'm like, who the hell are you? This one guy, they look like Cowboy Bebop characters. And then Suzuhara's sister is like, And then he says Masato. And she has like the mysterious Gendo glasses now. She has the Gendo glasses. On the one hand, I guess on the one hand, while I do like Masato and Ritsuko. Masato and Ritsuko's changes. On the one hand, I do like them. Like Ritsuko with the short hair. Masato seems more like Gendo, so she seems more closed off and like reserved. I like those changes, but I wanted more with them and more explanation with them. That's what I was wanting. Like, it's a cool change. I'm just like, I want more. And they're like, can I call him that? And they're like, I suppose. So this part, I want to get Ritsuko on this. I suppose. His physiological data perfectly matches that of code number 3 boy. So, is Shinji a clone? Is he a clone? So, is Shinji a clone or not? Right? Because Kaworu almost makes it think, Kaworu has made it seem like this has all happened before. Like, it's just we're redoing history over and over again. But this series hasn't quite acknowledged that any more than that. I don't know if they're saying, like, when he was inside the EVA unit, and when he was inside the O1 unit and merged with it, kind of like Rei, you know, they were in like primordial soup maybe, and now he's back in a physical form, and so they're making sure it's actually him. Like, no, it's Shinji. It physiologically matches who he is. He's back. But the frustrating thing about that is that in the original series, they didn't even question it. Like I feel like I feel like the heart with Masato and Shinji is gone. Like in the original series, when Shinji was in the primordial soup and Masato was like sitting there crying, being like, I just want him back. And when he comes back, they don't question it. They're just like, oh yeah, Shinji's back. There he is. Look at that. And maybe that was to the series' detriment. I don't know. Maybe they should have questioned it, being like, is this really Shinji or not? But here they do question it, but it's so sad because it's like the heart of it all has been just like ripped out. Like there's no more connection between Shinji and Masato. And Shinji's trying to make a connection with her. And now it makes the first rebuild. We were talking, I think it was with Alexander Q in the comments. She was like, she took the whole thing where Masato holds Shinji's hand holds his hand as they go down the elevator as like a really sweet moment, right? A really sweet and comforting moment. And at the time I was like, I don't know. I was very jaded from End of Evangelion. I was like, I don't know about Masato and Shinji. And now I miss it. Like that moment from Rebuild 1-1. Now I'm like, oh no, that moment was really good. I want more of that in this because yeah, it's so cold and distant. And you get why. You get why it's like that, but Ritsuko and Masato don't even want to recognize Shinji as himself. They're like, his dental profile and body are 100% identical to during the near third impact. Okay, so basically Shinji's just been in stasis for the last 14 years, and they're making sure it's actually him, which that is part of the cool thing with the time skip, is this concept that Shinji and Asuka, honestly, are stuck in the past. They are stagnant, and everyone else is moving forward, right? Which is a cool concept. I like the theme of that with Asuka. But here's the befuddling thing. What is this Eva curse? This Eva curse of like, what, immortality? What? Huh? Excuse me? They don't explain that at all. Because that was something that was frustrating, is that Masato and Ritsuko, everyone, even dear sweet Fuyu-chan, he's got to be in like his late 70s by this point. Sweet Fuyu-chan. Like, they all age, right? They all age. What'd she say at the end of there? She says that, all right, they asked about the DSS choker, which we get explanation of what that is. It's basically like a bomb collar. It's like Suicide Squad. And so, what did she say here? Because, yeah, Masato's looking there. But, yeah, everybody else ages. And everyone else ages except for Shinji and Asuka and Mari. And all they say is, like, it's the Eva curse. But we get no explanation of what that is. Eva curse, never heard of it. Don't even know. And she says the results of his deep level synchronization tests are currently being analyzed. So, yeah, he was so deeply synchronized with the Eva unit that he just, I guess, doesn't age. They stay 14 forever. I mean, that would explain why they need 14-year-olds, maybe, but she's a captain now, yeah. I do like that Suzuhara does look like Toji a little bit. It's nice. And so, yeah, they say biometric verification. They're like door master key mode. They're like detonation function, active. Yeah, like it's functional. Okay. And it's to your personal passcode. I do love their looks, though. I mean, Masato, And he's like, what the heck is this thing? But yeah, nobody gives him an explanation. They're like, we're not taking that off. And so they're just in this hellscape, right? It's so interesting. One thing that I kind of like about it is we see like post end of Evangelion kind of, what would that be like? Because that's kind of something that's posited at the end of Evangelion. It's like, well, if Shinji and Asuka are the only ones left, what is this world even like? What do we even do with it? And I like the idea of the will group. Like, it's like where there's a will, there's a way, right? Will versus NERV. Hell yeah! I'm all about like Ritsuko, and I do think Ritsuko might be a double agent, though. I still think Ritsuko might be a double agent. She seems, I don't know, some of the things that are said in this movie, Gendo says, and then Ritsuko says later. So I'm like, I would not be surprised if Ritsuko's a double agent. Wouldn't be surprised about that at all. Maybe we'll find out in the next movie. But I like the idea that Masato and them, they all were like, screw you, NERV. You guys tried to kill us all. We don't want that. Now, why Fuyu-chan is still with Gendo? Well, it's because of Yui, right? That's the only reason. But I like the fact that Masato is like, no, we branched away from NERV and the government, we formed our own organization to try to take NERV down and stop them from continuing their mission to destroy the world. I'm like, I'm all about that. I'm like, that's really a cool transition. It's a cool twist that these people took charge of their own lives and we're not going to go along with Gendo's plans. I'm like, I'm all about it. It's just a shame that we don't get much more time with them. And we see Maya. Maya's like in charge of this group now. This group of like, we're a motley crew of civilians among us. And Maya's just like, no excuses. Like, she's become this badass. Like, okay. And she says, I can't stand young men. I feel like that line, that's why I can't stand young men, is like a direct reference to the fact that she doesn't like men at all. She's into women. I feel like that's a reference to that, but okay. But yeah, so we get these other characters that the one guy looks like Spike off Cowboy Bebop, and the other guy, you know, this one girl, she looks like a Pokemon gym leader. What's her name? With the lips, Kitakami. Kitakami looks like a Pokemon gym leader. I'm waiting for her to bring out Jigglypuff and put the entire crew to sleep, put the angels to sleep. But one thing that is kind of frustrating is the new characters. The new characters do nothing. They are very superfluous. They don't even need to be there. Like, Kitakami, we see her for 5 seconds. Like, the one guy that looks like Spike, don't matter. I feel like with Hyuga and Alba and Maya, we knew them from the series. So going into this film, as a fan, you're like, oh, there's Alba and them. Cool. And Alba's got a sweet goatee now. But with these new characters, I'm like, why do we even need them? Like, they don't add anything to the story. They have a cool design. I'm sure they made some official art of them. I do like that Ritsuko looks down at Kitakami like, you're a bit hotter than Maya. I was like, is Ritsuko going to get in on some action with Kitakami? Who knows? But In any case, I don't care for Masato being so dour, because I think it doesn't work for me, because we get no explanation other than Masato feels betrayed by Shinji. Other than that, we have no other reference to why she feels this way. Like, what's up with Kaji? Like, is she also mad because she found Kaji's body and thought Shinji killed him too? You know, I was waiting for some explanation of that to help give her character more angst and reason behind it, but we just don't get it. So it's fine. But in any case, so we go down where Shinji, these angels appear out of nowhere, like all these angels come, right? And they're still attacking. So we're doing a little bit different than what we've done with the angels in the past. They're still coming at them. They're still fighting them with Asuka and Mari. And then they decide to use the O1 unit to let the ship move on its own. Okay, to get the ship to go up into the sky. All right, and so we can kind of see that they're using the O1 unit as like as an engine. Okay. All right. And so then, and I like that Shinji in this, one thing I do like is that Shinji is more compassionate and open as a character. Now, there are some frustrating things about Shinji that we will get to. But he is more passionate and open. Like, he's like, oh, thank goodness Asuka's okay. It's like, oh, and he tries to get Rei all the books and everything. Like, Shinji is a more positive, upbeat character. And I like that about Shinji in this. And Shinji's reaction to seeing Asuka is very understandable. He doesn't know what's been happening. He doesn't know at this point there's been 14 years go by. And so he's just like, oh, thank goodness everything's okay. I'm so glad. You're all right, Asuka. And it's like, well, is she all right? And he just wants to know answers. What's frustrating is he's like, what about me? He's like, what's happening? And nobody gives him answers. He's like, what is happening? And they say that we don't need him. And she says, you won't be doing anything. It's like, we do see her without her glasses on for that one moment, right? And then it passes away and Shinji's like, so it begs the question. It's so interesting. It's kind of like the answer, he leaves her with Suzuhara. The answer is, you know, when Shinji was asking, like, what if I'm not an EVA pilot? What's that going to be like? Well, in this movie, we're seeing that. It's Asuka and Mari doing it, and Shinji's not required to be a pilot. It's almost as if Masato had urged Shinji so much in the previous films to be a pilot and to do it one more time, and that you could save the world. You can do all these things. Well, he did that and nearly destroyed the world. So now Masato's like, nope, that was a mistake. It seems like Masato's like feels guilty about the fact that she urged Shinji to be a pilot, and now they're in a living hellscape. And she's like, well, that was a bad idea, so not going to make that mistake again. But yeah, so they take all the intel. We get all this fun stuff. The animation's really cool. It's neat. But I'll be honest. And it is what is frustrating is that for all the new, like, animation and the sci-fi elements, for all those, it does, for the most part, when we get to NERV, like that stuff with the character work, I'm here for. It does lack the heart from Neon Genesis. I think that's, if you're a Neon Genesis fan, you don't watch Neon Genesis for the mech battles. You just don't, right? You're not watching Neon Genesis because it's a sci-fi. It's kind of like the Twin Peaks argument, right? You don't watch Twin Peaks because it's a soap opera. It has those elements in it, and those are great, and those are worth liking. But at the end of the day, you're watching Twin Peaks for the characters, for the surrealism, for the psychological stuff. Like that series, you're watching it because it's a character-driven show that has these weird, surrealist, psychological elements that make it different. And that's kind of the same with Neon Genesis. I don't care about the mechs. Don't care about the mech battles. By the time we got to episode 16, the rest of the season didn't even focus on that at all. I'm here for the characters, their interactions, and the psychological story behind them and how they all communicate with one another or don't, and what the impact of that is. So that's what I like about Neon Genesis. And this movie, when we get to NERV and the old, like, decrepit remnants of it, I love that part. And we'll put that on there. And I love the character work we get with Kaworu and Rei for the most part. With Shinji, that stuff's great. And the stuff here with Asuka coming up is good. But the rest of it feels like it feels a little soulless sometimes. Like I wanted more and I didn't get it. So it's interesting. But yeah, so Asuka gets her moment. Asuka and then her and Mari, they're battling this wall of angel eyes, which is a fun time. And we get all this tech and stuff, which is cool. It's neat. But again, I felt like all this stuff was happening, but we as the audience have no explanation of how we got here. We're just here. And so like Shinji, we're just sitting here like, I really need some answers. Shinji's like, I really would like to know what's going on. Like, this stuff's cool and everything. Neat, but what are we even doing? And then the one guy that we have no clue what his name is, he references Kaji for a hot second. And that made me think, okay, we'll go back and see Kaji in this movie. Nope. We just get a lot of sci-fi jargon, a lot of stuff happening. I do like, it's funny, I was saying, oh, this battleship looks like an EVA. It is. It's the O1 unit they've converted into a battleship. And I'm like, well, when did we do that? Again, like, we don't get enough info. Like the when and how and what. Again, something that is frustrating with this is that everything seems to be in Gendo's plan. Everything in this movie is going according to Gendo's plan. Everything. Like Masato taking the O1 unit, part of the plan. Battling NERV, part of the plan. Shinji and them going and not quite doing still what Gendo wanted, part of the plan. Yui's head exploding, part of the plan. I was like, what? I'm like, Gendo, you are not Aizen Sosuke. you can't pull that off. And so that part was frustrating because I was like, well, if it's all according to Gendo's plan, what the hell? Just, okay. I guess with Thrice Upon a Time, I'll probably need to like temper my expectations to see where that leads us. But yeah, so we get all this where we break through the water and everything. They're battling these jellyfish angels. The jellyfish angels are a fun design. I like them. They're cool. And they managed to fire through them and kill them. It's great. But yeah, we have this, I will be honest. The mothership that is flying through the battleship, it looks kind of like a Pokemon. With the wings coming out, it looks kind of like Latias kind of like Latias. Or, Lugia. Lugia is what I'm thinking of. It looks like Lugia. It looks like a Pokemon. And, which matches because the one girl, maybe it's the animation studio too, the one girl, Kitakami, kind of looks like a Pokemon trainer. I'm just stuck on it. But yeah, so they're talking about how Masato's insane. Like, she's a more interesting captain than Kaji described. So, okay, if Kaji knows she's a captain, that means Kaji's alive somewhere. Where is he? I'm sure we'll find out, but I was just like waiting. As soon as he said that, I'm like, okay, Kaji knows that she's alive and that she's a captain. Okay, cool. Then that means that we'll get some answers with that. And so they establish the power to kill God is within this mothership, which makes sense. So the mothership is using the power of the O1 unit and it's using it to kill the angels. So, but I'm like, the power to kill God, yeah, we've been doing that this whole time, right? We've been using that power to kill the angels this whole time, correct? Wonder, the ship of hope. They call the ship of hope Wonder. Wonder, fun. And it's got like a very German spelling, Wonder. Okay. And that's funny. I guess that thematically is kind of cool because you have the O1 ship. The O1 unit is the ship of hope for Will, and it's also the hope for Gendo. So it kind of fits both ways. I guess I like that a lot. That's a fun time. So then we go to, and I love Shinji's just like, what is happening? And they say tentative name, Shinji Ikari. Again, what the hell's with this tentative name? Like, he's not a clone, right? And so they say the vice captain wants to speak with you. All right, and so Ritsuko is the vice captain now and explaining that the O1 is being used as the engine of the ship. Okay, so that explains that. All right. They're like, you don't need, it is the autonomous assault arc, Wonder. Okay, all right, cool. I do like the ship. But, so yeah, I guess she's like, well, that makes sense why I don't need to be a pilot now, because there's not an Eva for me to pilot. It's part of the ship now. There's no need for me to be a pilot. I'm like, yep, nope, that part makes sense. I like that. And they're like, your deep level synchronization test, it's 0. You don't synchronize with the O1 unit anymore. Which is curious. So again, why doesn't Shinji connect with the O1? That part was a little frustrating. One, because it's not referenced again. We don't get any other information about it. But 2, I'm like, so is his soul not there if he's a clone? I don't think Shinji is a clone, but I'm like, if he was, that could be an explanation. But then all the clones of Rei synchronize with it, so... But I'm kind of frustrated by that, because the whole point of the series was that Shinji and the O1 unit were compatible, because the O1 unit's made up of Shinji's mom, Yui, and that's how he connects to her. And that was like a big thematic with like the psychology of it, with the whole mother-son thing. But here they just kind of throw it out the window, and they're like, well, now you no longer seek with the Eva unit, so you can't pilot her anyway. And it's like, what do we do with that? Even if you got into the Eva, you wouldn't be able to start it up. And so that's it. And they're like, isn't that great, Akari-san? You don't have to worry about it. And then they say the unit awoken for 12 seconds earlier. We can't overlook that fact, which is why we installed the choker on you. Okay. And so the choker is a defecation shutdown system. Like, we're gonna make you basically explode if you try to awaken the unit again. Okay. And so then we go back to this. All right, we go back to this unit here. And what do we have on here? It's in test subject mode. It's a physical device that prevents awakenings. We get some imagery here, right? It symbolizes your punishment as... I mean, that part's pretty on the nose. They're like, it symbolizes your punishment and our mistrust in you. It's like, wow, that's... Just tell them right out, right? And so we see the N3, the third impact event footage. Okay, so we see the part where, and it's Alba recorded it. We see the part where Shinji and Rei were like combining with one another. Okay. They like combined. Okay. Should you succumb to your own emotions while piloting an Eva, and it's too much of a risk to avoid, will basically kill you. So yeah, it's just kind of like it's kind of like you reap what you sow. It's like we had these pilots. It's so interesting though, because in the original series and leading up to this movie, it was like, no, we need the pilot. We don't need the dummy system. We need the pilots to pilot the Evas because of their emotions and their humanity. But now it's like, no, we don't want humanity to be in these Evas, especially not Shinji. He's way too emotional. Which is funny, saying Shinji's way too emotional. It feels weird to say that, but they're like, no, if you get too emotional, we can't have you. You'll stop the world. So interesting. Okay, but they still don't rely on the dummy systems. It's like they just don't trust Shinji, because they still rely upon Asuka and Mari to pilot the Evas. They don't use the dummy plugs. They literally just don't like Shinji. Which is interesting. And he's like, oh, so they'll kill me. Okay. And he's like, oh. And he's like, what's the meaning of this? He's like, it doesn't make sense. He's like, I don't understand how things end up this way. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I'm with Shinji. Like, how do we... And Ritsuko's like, yeah, it doesn't make sense for you to panic. She's like, tell him your name and rank. And then she says, I'm sorry to introduce myself so late to you, but I'm Lieutenant Suzahara Sakura, your assigned medical officer. And I do love her design though, but she's a medical officer and she's a lieutenant. Interesting. Which is a little bit befuddling, because I'm like, is Toji and Ida dead? I guess so. Kaworu kind of alludes to that. He's kind of like, well, mass extinction is kind of, a process of evolution. So he kind of alludes that Toji and Ida are dead. So I feel kind of bad for Sakura, because I don't feel like Toji would want her to be on this battle station I feel like if Toji were alive, he would not want to know that she's on this battle station risking her life. He'd been like, no, get off of there. But then again, what choice do they have? It's the third impact. Everything's hell. So what do we do? And he's like, wait a minute. He's like, did you say Suzuhara? And then he's like, you're Toji. She's like, yeah, I'm his sister. Thank you for being friends with my brother. So that's why she's okay with Shinji and is nice to him, because she's like, you were friends with my brother. Thank you. So that leads me to believe he's dead. Toji and all of them are dead. Well, Toji having the happy ending was very short-lived, wasn't it? The end of Evangelion, the end of 2.22, the rebuild. Toji was with Hikari and everything seemed to be hunky-dory. Nope. They're all dead. Probably, this is why Masato is so upset, because Pin is gone. Pin is dead, so that's why she's so upset. Mm-hmm. And I like that she wipes her nose like, yeah, I'm his younger sister, hee hee. And he's like, how are you younger? And they're like, 14 years have passed. And Shinji's like, excuse me? And then, okay, I do like Asuka with the cap with the pins and the bomber jacket. I do like that. I do like Asuka's look. And then she has like the Crocs on. Why does she have the Crocs on? Again, she's like, oh, you're okay. And then she hits. This is kind of what is frustrating about it, is that Asuka, like, the first thing she does is let out her frustration. She's like, I can't stop myself. I've held it in all these years. And tells him, and he's like, excuse me? He's like, what was that for? She's like, it came from my pent-up anger and grief. And grief. Okay. So, I'm going to put down frustrating here. Asuka and Shinji's relationship. Which, it's kind of like that in the original series too, so I can't really dog it too much, because in the original series, there was always this like tension between Shinji and Asuka all the time. And it's kind of why I don't ship Shinji and Asuka at all. I just can't. I'm like, they're so not good for each other. It's like, it's almost like the series is forcing us to want them to be together. And I'm like, no, because they're not good for one another. Like, they could be friends, right? That's fine, but they need to start out by being friends. And they're not even really that in the original series or in this series. In the original series, there's not that connection between them. They try to forge it. It doesn't work. And then by the end of it, it's like they're still trying to make progress, but it's just not there, right? And End of Evangelion, rewatching it and talking with everybody, it does leave you with a little bit of hope that maybe if they keep communicating, opening up to one another, there's a chance. There's a chance that they could become friends and make something work between them, but it's not there, right? Now here, it makes total sense, like when you say pent up anger and grief, it makes total sense that she punches the wall and she's mad at Shinji. She's just like, I'm so upset right now because it's been 14 years. I've been wanting you to be here and to help me, and you haven't been, and so I'm really mad about it, and I've got all this anger, and so my reaction is just to try to punch you, right? And it does help bookend. She's mad at him at the beginning of this, and at the end of it, she's trying to because 14 years have passed. 14 years have passed. And I was like, okay, Asuka, you've had a decade and a half to mature, right? Even if you're not physically aging because of some curse, you've matured, right? And by the end of it, yeah, she seems to have matured, which I like a lot. I just don't like that when we get to Mari at the end, we'll talk about that at the end. I don't like that they try to shoehorn in that Shinji and Asuka are going to be romantically involved. I'm like, I feel like we have not earned that in this series. We're earning them becoming friends and getting closer maybe, but them becoming like a ship and romantic, I'm not seeing it out of this movie. I see them working towards that, and maybe if we get more moments of them together developing a relationship like he's developed with Rei and Kaworu in this movie, then you could convince me. But just as it is at the very end, when Mari's like, become a man, save your princess, I'm like, what does Asuka... One, why does Asuka need to be a princess rescued? It's Asuka. She's badass on her own. She doesn't need Shinji to rescue her, first of all. And two, it is not earned at all that Shinji has to go rescue Asuka, and it's being a man doing so. I was just like, Mari, shut up. I was like, shut your face. You don't know what you're talking about. I feel like Asuka should not be a damsel in distress. She doesn't need to be at all. None of these women need to be damsels in distress. So why does Shinji have to rescue them? No. And he asks about her left eye, and she says it's none of his business, but I'm like, it's from the first rebuild, or from the second one, right? And he's like, you said it's been 14 years, but nothing about you has changed apart from the eye patch. And she says it's a curse of the Eva, but I'm like, we get no explanation of that. None of that's explained. And Shinji's like, won't anybody, he's like, where's Ayanami? Nobody wants to explain. They say she doesn't exist anymore, but they couldn't find her. All they found was the tape player. Okay. But then he hears her, right? He hears her, and that's when she shows up to rescue him, right? And again, it's frustrating because they don't explain anything. They clearly know about Ray being inside the other Eva. Why didn't they tell him that when he was in quarantine there? Like, why didn't they, because he was asking about it, why didn't they say, probably because they knew he'd go along with her. But it's just, grumble, grumble, grumble. But yeah, he ends up going with Ray because, and I don't blame Shinji for going with Ray. He's like, nobody here is telling me anything. They've threatened to kill me. I'm just going to be, because he's like, well, you guys are threatening to kill me. Why wouldn't I go with her? And Masato's like, well, we'll keep you safe. But he's like, safe under a leash and in a cage. Nope. I don't blame Shinji for going with Ray. I don't. And Suzuhara's like, don't. She's like, do not get into the Eva and pilot it. I do like the shot, though, of Masato. When Masato has the gun pointed at Shinji, that part is interesting. I do like the way that Masato looks. And she has half the eye covered with the glasses and half of it revealing how she really feels. And of course, at the very end, Masato, she can't do it. She can't kill Shinji. They say will. They're like, he's like, why is Ayanami piloting it? What's going on? And they say that they're an organization called the Will. Okay. Like the will of humanity to keep carrying on. Again, it's surprising that Fuyu-chan is not with them, but he's doing this all for Yui. So here we go. But yeah, so the 09 unit, I guess, not the 00 unit. I do like at the end here that Suzuhara, as Shinji chooses to go with Ray, because he's like, why would I stay here? Suzuhara says, do what you want. Do whatever you want, but please don't pilot the Eva. Seriously, give us a break. Ah! I love that Suzuhara's like, please don't stop the third impact from happening. I'd really like it if you didn't do that. That'd be great. I do like Suzuhara. She looks really good there. And she's like, please give us a break. And what does Shinji do? He doesn't listen. No. So the warnings were all there. Where Suzuhara, she was foreshadowing it so much. She's like, do whatever you want. Go with them if you want to. If you want to get out of here, I don't blame you a bit. But don't pilot the Evas. And Shinji's just like, I mean, I'm still going to, but there's nothing wrong with that, right? That was great. That was great. And so they leave, and then Masato, she can't do it. Masato can't kill Shinji. She has the chance to. She can't do it. In the end, she just gives up and lets him get out of range. Which I do like that little bit of heart there, that Masato does still care for Shinji, but she's so jaded and so messed up by what's happened with the third impact, which would kind of make sense too, because her dad, she had to live through the second impact with her dad. Kaji said in the last film that she didn't want to be around any of that stuff because it would trigger all of her memories. And now she's forced to be in it 24/7. So I do appreciate that the show is giving us those show don't tell elements, but I think it takes it a little too far sometimes, especially in the beginning here, because you're sitting there confused going, I wish I knew what was happening. And when you go back and rewatch it a second time and think about it, then you're like, oh, okay. But for a first time viewing, it's a little rough. I also like, too, how with the time skip, they've aged up the characters. So, when Ritsuko is there, I'm going to take a picture of it. When she's there, looking at Masato, feeling bad for her for not being able to kill Shinji, you can see, the bags under her eyes and her lines. She's older now, too. She's in her 40s. Masato's in her 40s, too. It's great. I really like it. And then Asuka, as she's like looking out, she's like, he's not even an idiot. He's a brat. He's just a brat. He's not even Baka Shinji anymore. You cannot redo. So yeah, we cannot go back and change the past, apparently. All right. I'm here for it. This is the post End of Evangelion world, post Third Impact. We're getting to see what this is like. I will agree with Shinji. I don't like Rei in black. Black does not suit Rei at all. That is a Kaworu color, but Rei cannot pull off black. And she's the 09 unit. So, and she's clearly a clone, right? She's not the Rei that he saved. Okay. She's not the Rei that he saved. So, NERV post Third Impact. It seems like the only ones that are still there are Gendo and Fuyu-chan, Kaworu, Rei, and Shinji. There's like 5 people left at NERV. How is it still functioning? How are they able to make this 13th EVA unit? Where's the crew building everything? So one thing is, at least with, even though I kind of dogged like the extra people that, the new characters that we have there that we don't really get anything, at least we know that there's new characters that are working with Will to keep everything afloat, right? It's like, where is NERV's crew? Who's giving Shinji the food? Who's giving him the clothes? Where's all this coming from? Why don't we see anybody else there? How'd that piano get there? We don't know. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But yeah, that is one thing that's kind of befuddling, is that with Will, we see the crew and we see everybody like working in tandem to get the parts and pieces moving. With NERV, all we see is Fuyu-chan, Gendo, Kaworu, Rei, and Shinji. We don't see any other members. And it's almost like the polar opposite, right? With Will, there's all these new characters I don't care about that they're trying to make me care about, that I'm like, no, I just need to know you're there helping the stuff go along. With here, it's the polar opposite. We only have the characters we care about, but you almost need to have at least see like a body, or at least see like a red shirt or something moving around, showing that that's how this place still functions. So it's two extremes and there's no middle ground. It's interesting. But I love NERV and how it looks now. This whole delve, I kind of have an obsession with, I love seeing, and I think Spirited Away kind of has me, is the reason for it, but I love like photo albums and photographers that have gone through like abandoned amusement parks and abandoned like spaces and photographed like as the earth reclaims it. I kind of love that. Because I remember watching a documentary where Spirited Away was made, and Hayao Miyazaki was talking about like seeing different amusement parks that were slowly like retaken by the earth, and that was kind of like influential in developing the environment of that movie. And so I know that like in the US, we've had like when Hurricane Katrina came through, there was a lot of amusement parks down in Louisiana that were abandoned. And I love seeing like the photographs and documentaries people have done of those spaces being reclaimed by nature. So seeing NERV like completely gutted, seeing it just like from its once like industrial sci-fi elements to being like this husk of an organization that's been slowly reclaimed by the world around it. I love that. I was like, yes, it's my jam. And Shinji tries to talk to Rei a lot. Like, but seeing the geofront and everything, like it's just all gutted and just there's nothing there. I will say, Shinji talking with Rei, making an effort, right? Making an effort to communicate with Rei. And yeah, we see the damage from the NERV headquarters all down there. And Shinji's like, what happened? And then seeing the NERV logo like completely like battered up. It's so freaking cool. I love it so much. And seeing them go down the elevator and it's all empty. Yeah, it's just so neat. And it's funny because Shinji tries to talk to Rei and open up to her and communicate with her. And she doesn't have a response for him. And it's almost like Anno is doing what I wanted to happen post episode 23. Because after episode 23, Shinji is too afraid to talk to Rei because he knows she's a clone, right? He knows she's a clone. He's too afraid to talk to her. Here, he is trying to talk to her, but he doesn't know she's a clone yet. So he is trying to talk to her. and communicate, and it's not working, and he's like, what's wrong? And then once Fuyu-chan explains that she's a clone of his mom, he's like, oh, that pilot. So I feel like what's frustrating is I feel like in the last movie, we had this beautiful bond between Shinji and Rei develop. And it was like my favorite thing about the movie was the bond between Shinji and Rei develop. And here, he like moves so far away from Rei when he figures out she's a clone. He's like, nope, this is weird. And the movie is trying to like shoehorn and make us want like Asuka and Shinji together by the end of it. And I'm like, no. And then we have Kaworu and Shinji together and it's like, yes. And then the movie's like, well, we're going to have to kill him anyway. And I'm like, why? You change everything about this series. Everything you change, except that Kaworu has to die. Why is that? Why couldn't you let him live? Why do we have to do... Well, we'll talk about all that. I do love, though, the wide shots. There's more wide shots in this series, in this movie. There's more, and it mimics the original series. There's more wide shots. There's more quiet moments. There's more, like, deep thinking. It's like the movie just needed to be 20 minutes longer to give us the plot that we need to make it all more cohesive, but the silent, quiet moments it does give us, like when they're walking silently across the bridge, I love that. Basically everything when Shinji's at post Third Impact NERV, every scene from this point, I love this. This is awesome. Like just seeing how, and it's almost like Shinji digesting everything and seeing how it's all different and changed. So freaking cool. I love it. I love it. And so then Shinji's like, well, where am I? What's going on? You want to explain? And Rei can't explain everything. We see like everything's just kind of decimated. The sky is blue though. He's like, it's been 14 years. And then the moment that piano started playing, I was like, I'm done. I'm done for. I'm done. Because you know what this is? This opening is exactly like in the script for episode 24, because at the moment they started pan over the bridge there and we started to see the ruins, the pristine white floor of the area there, and the piano with the tree in the middle. The moment that we saw that, I was like, no, this is the script from episode 24. This was the abandoned draft where it was the ruins of the high school after episode 23 where Rei had blown up. It was the ruins of the high school, and there's a piano there from the music room, and Shinji sees Kaworu down there. It's the same thing, except now we're in the remnants of NERV. And there's the tree growing, like, out of the tile. Like the tree that's being nurtured. That is one thing that's kind of interesting about this part of the movie. Everything on the outside, everything outside of this facility and NERV and stuff, it looks like a hellscape. The ocean is red. Everything is just ruined. It's in tatters. It seems like there's no way life on Earth could exist. But we see from the remnants here at NERV that grass is growing, that plants are starting to come back, that the tree is coming back. So there's a chance that the world could mend itself, right? It's given those little sprigs of hope. And of course the tree is so symbolic being there right next to the piano. I'm just like, Kaworu's just like, Kaworu was planning for Shinji to come, and he's like, look, I'm gonna wait for Rei's signal. I need this piano in the middle of this white tiled floor. I need a tree. Get it right next to that tree. He's like, Kaworu's waited 14 years for this to happen. Kaworu's like, okay, look, I need this tree here. I need it to be growing in time for me to put the piano here. Wipe this piano off. I need the bench ready. I've got to be perfectly set up so that when Shinji comes, I can make my grand entrance. And it's pretty glorious. Does it make sense? No, but am I here for the fan service? You better believe it. Oh my God, give it to me. I'm just like, yes. And then Kaworu with the purple shirt underneath. And Shinji's like, oh, hey, who's this guy? I love Shinji's just like, who's this guy? I don't know. I love that Kaworu like looks up at him. Like, oh, hey, friend. Hey, boo. How you doing? Like, just looks up at him. And Shinji's just like, what do I do with this? Who are you? Why are you looking at me funny? Doesn't know who he is. It's like their first meeting. And so then he's placed in front of Gendo and the unit, the 13th unit. And he's like, it's an Eva. And then he sees Gendo. And Gendo has the visor just like Masato, and his hair looks a little bit grayer. Mm-hmm. But he has the visor where he can't see Shinji at all. It's like he's completely cut off from Shinji, right? His vision is completely obscured, so he is not deterred from his goal, right? And then he manages to see Kaworu. Kaworu just pops up. Kaworu just appears. He just apparates out of nowhere. He hasn't been there the whole time, and then he just comes up, and they're like, poof, here he is. He's like, hey, what's up? How's it going? Want to be a pilot? The idea of co-piloting it, I'm like, hell yes. He's like the piano player, and he's like, mm-hmm. And he's like, when the time comes, you're going to pilot the Eva with him. And it's like they basically have been like, it's been inside the black egg, and it's shucked off, and that's what they've been making the 13th unit from. But I'm like, where'd you get all this stuff from? How'd you do this? What are the logistics? The logistics don't add up, especially on NERV's end. It's a skeletal framework, barely in existence, but yet they were able to make this bay for a 13th EVA unit. Fuyu-chan's 70 years old. He can't lift squat. You think he was going to do anything with this? Where's your men? Where's your crew? What is happening? And it's not explained, which is kind of sad. It's like I like the idea of NERV versus Will, but the logistics of it are a bit illogical. I'm just like, okay. Like, that will be all. And she's just like, wait a minute. Nobody, I have so many questions and things I want to talk about. That is this movie in a nutshell. There's so many questions. We get some answers. And then, of course, Kaworu and Shinji are in the light there. And Shinji's just like, ugh. In the spotlight, right? Like, that's me in the corner. That's me in the spotlight. As he loses his religion. The black box part is cool with the phone. I like that. The idea that he doesn't have a dial on the phone. It's kind of taking the phone call from nowhere. It's the idea that he cannot call anybody or communicate. But here's the thing that's kind of frustrating with that and befuddling is that I like the metaphor of the phone that calls no one. That you have to call him. He can't communicate with anyone. But then he can just leave the room. How does that work? He can just leave the room. He can't call anybody. They give him his food, his toothbrush and everything, and his clothes. But he's able to leave the room whenever he wants to. Okay, it's like Belle from Beauty and the Beast. She goes to the West Wing. I do love so there's bicycles everywhere. I guess, is that the crew? I guess, is that supposed to be the crew that works there? There's bicycles. But at the same time, there's nothing in the vending machines. So how are they eating? How do they have food? Where are the apartments? Where do these people that supposedly work for NERV and make it work go? How's it on autopilot? It doesn't establish they were automated, so how does that work? I mean, the visuals are amazing. I love the abandoned feel of NERV, but logistically, my brain is like trying to I'm like cinema sins, trying to figure out how it works. And I'm like, where are these people? And he's like, where's Ayanami? And then, yeah, everything's like torn up from all of that. And we see like the conveyor belt of everything. We see the conveyor belt of all the stuff that's, I feel like that was a bike product placement maybe. But we see like the conveyor belts of all of the parts being made and distributed, but who's running it. I mean, the visuals are cool. I like the visual aspect of it. It's kind of like a feast for the eyes. You see all the like guns and weapons and everything just like all in a big heap. And it seems like, and the tanks and everything, like it's all very interesting, but it's like, how is NERV functioning? I mean, there's still conveyor belts going. And it's interesting, it's playing on, instead of the trains full of people going in and out, it's just parts and machinery and weapons. And we see all the hands, like for the Evas, I guess. Maybe this is foreshadowing for the next film, because at the preview of the next film, in the preview of the next movie, they showed a bunch of like Eva-like creations battling. So maybe this was foreshadowing as Shinji's on his walkabout. We're seeing that Gendo and Fuyu-chan are in the process of getting all these other Eva prototypes or something, or robots created to fight in the next film. Maybe that's a foreshadowing of that. Okay. The one thing that is frustrating that I'm like, wait a minute, because there's like 7 of them, right? There's 7 little core units that have like all the Tree of Life stuff on it, and we see everything. Here's the frustrating part. is that Shinji, he tries talking with Rei, and he's more communicative, but Shinji is either not curious enough or not cautious or contemplative. And there's two moments in which I thought that. One is with, you have these 7 test tubes with these creepy incantations on the top of them that Rei's little shack is in front of, that she clearly is within the test tubes during her thing. Shinji, if you just walked like 50 more feet, you would see that big massive structure. Wouldn't you want to ask what that is? Wouldn't you want to go, you've been exploring this whole time, you don't want to go down and explore what that looks like? What that could be? That could be something important we need to know about. But no, instead you want to just go to Rei's little shack that she has and chill out there. Okay. And we see like the pill bottles and we see her like stuff there. Now again, Shinji's super embarrassed from seeing her naked, and he tells her to put some clothes on, and she's like, you came into my house. What I'm sorry. Didn't expect you to be there. And she clearly just got out of the test tube, right? And she says, only if it's an order. She's only doing something if it's an order. So that's like the one nude shot of the whole film, and it's not focused on too much. Did it need to be there? No, but it's fine. But I do question, like, Shinji, why didn't you just, like, you know? And so he almost steps on like her bed or whatever. He's like, you could have gone 50 more feet and questioned what that thing outside the ledge is. But he tells her about the record, the little Walkman, and she doesn't understand what it is, right? And because she's a clone, the old Rei would know, but she does not. And he's like, oh, you got a new plug suit, huh? Like, he tries to make small talk with her. Shinji's trying to, like, get some information from her. Like, he's trying to be all, like, nice. He's like, oh, it looks good on you, but I don't know about the black. Like, he's trying to be nice, right? It's kind of, it's funny to see Shinji, like, being so open and talkative to Rei and trying to be friendly with her, and she's just like, And he's like, wow. He's like, NERV's changed quite a bit, right? Want to explain that? And she's like, Shinji is begging for information, and she just is not giving him anything. And so then we see the medicine and everything, and the beaker and all of that. And he's like, what's your dad trying to do? What happened to everyone? And we see the lantern, right? We see the lantern that's usually a sign of, like, trying to obtain knowledge. Shinji's asking all the right questions. He's just asking the wrong person. Rei is not the one to ask these questions to, right? He's like, do you know anything? And she's just like, no. And he's like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, no surprise, I guess. He's like, when'd you get back from the O1 unit? And she doesn't know, because she didn't get back from the O1 unit. She came out of the test tube. Which again is why I was hoping we'd see the baby Reis, but we don't. So curious. He says, this isn't even a proper room. Well, there's not really any rooms left. And so he does talk about how she liked to read and that he would bring her books. The moment that she says, what does it mean to like something? And I'm like, this is clearly a clone. And she doesn't know any different. And Shinji just doesn't get it. And so Gendo talks about how Seal is quiet. And he says that the instrumentality project is going to continue to be carried out as it was written. They have no need to talk with us. But Gendo's whole thing is to amend it. So again, I feel like maybe the last movie is going to get into end of Evangelion territory. So sad seeing Fuyu-chan be so old. No. And I like that Fuyu asks him a question and Gendo doesn't reply. And he's just like, this is every day of my life because there's no one else for him to talk to. Fuyu has no one else to talk to. So no wonder he wants to play shogi with Shinji. I don't blame him. And he says, I'll tag along with your plans. It's also for Yui-kun's sake. He loved her till the very, very end. He loved her till the bitter end. It's like, Fuyu-chan, sweet bean. I do like the symbolism of the room. Again, we have these big wide shots, which I think now that I questioned at the beginning of the reaction why we had so many wide shots, why the screen was wide, but it's so you can have these big shots and it just feels bigger. The space feels emptier. And I like that a lot. That's really good. It just won't work. His player won't work. And Shinji's just like, looks like a dead fish there on the bed. Like, what do I do? I can't get my player to work. And he stares up at the ceiling lamp. And so then he goes through everybody's like, I like that it's all like color spotted. You see the color of their eyes, but that's it. She's like, you don't have to do anything. It's none of your business. Don't pilot the Eva. Pilot the Eva. I don't know. It's the movie does a good job of portraying Shinji's confusion. He's like, well, I'm being told not to do something. Then I'm being told to do something. Then nobody knows and can give me any answers. He's like, I'm just really confused. Right? And so then from there he goes out to the library, which again, the visuals in this movie are really good. I love the idea that the library is just trashed. And which makes me believe that there's also nobody working here because they'd have, worked on the library books, you would think. But again, logistics. And he finds this one book and decides to take it to Rei. And I like the Shinji and Rei moments where he's trying to like build up their relationship again. He's like, here's some books for you to read. And she never ends up reading them. And he finally gets frustrated with her, which I was glad for. I was like, yeah, go for it, Shinji. Get some emotion. Express yourself. But yeah, so then he goes back. He doesn't know what to do. He's just stuck sitting there being like, well, I'm all by myself. What can I do? And then who comes in to save the day? But Kaworu with that damn piano. That damn piano. I love it. And we hear him and see him. And yep. We go back here. And we see the Yama. Again, the piano. The product placement's all for the piano, right? The piano and bicycles were the product placement in this movie. This duet scene. He's like, what do I do? He's like, weren't we going to talk? He's like, you said we were going to talk, right? And Kaworu's like, we'll talk with music. He's like, piano duets are musical dialogues. I love it. I love the tie into episode 24 where he's like, music is singing to the soul, right? It's how we get together, right? It's also a play on Asuka and Shinji and the whole Dance Dance Revolution thing where Masato was trying to get them to sync up together by getting them to dance and do music together because it would make them line up. And it ends up working in the end of the episode, but they have a lot of trials and tribulations leading up to it. Here, that's kind of the play on it. And again, the relationship between Rei and Shinji feels earned from the last movie and into this one because there's effort on both. In the second movie, there was effort on both Shinji and Rei to develop their relationship so it feels earned. Rei tried to make the dinner. Shinji tried to go to it. Shinji tried to savor it. It feels like a very earned relationship. In here, Shinji is trying to earn that relationship back with Rei, but Rei can't reciprocate, right? So it still feels earned though because there's effort, right? With Shinji and Asuka, it doesn't feel earned in this movie because it just feels like a book-ended experience. And I like that last scene with Asuka and Shinji a lot, but it doesn't make me get on board with their relationship yet because I need more. It doesn't feel earned yet. Now, Kaworu and Shinji, this relationship feels earned, and I like this. And he's like, oh, I'll pass. I can't play. And Kaworu's like, well, it's important to change and learn new things in order to live on. Like, it's important to change and learn new things in order for us to keep going. Right? And then, oh my gosh, Kaworu and then cowering over with that smirk on his face, like, I'll help you, I'll teach you. It's like, and then him playing that music, of course, he's like, it's easy. You just need to press the keys around here. And grabbing his hand and everything, I just like, they just animated the hell out of Kaworu in this. But this duet scene is my ultimate fan service. It's absolutely perfect. It's just, you need to just press the keys here. And just, and Shinji's like, I don't know about this. It felt very Corpse Bride when like Victor and Emily have the duet, which I guess that relationship kind of checks out with this. And then just two boys, he just scooches him over. We're good. And starts playing and encourages Shinji to play along. I could sit here and watch this piano duet all day. Because he encourages him to actually... What I like about this is that they are very interactive in this. What I like about this is it's kind of taking aspects of Kaworu from the drafts. Because in the original series, Kaworu, he comes in as this perfect being and is perfect for 22 minutes, dies, pieces out, and Shinji laments about it and his perfect relationship with him for the rest of the series into Evangelion. Here, Kaworu is I wouldn't say he's as human as he is in the scripts, but here Kaworu and Shinji actually have an established relationship and they build upon it. And when he goes down and tells him the truth, there's give and take there. And it's not just Shinji's infatuated with Kaworu because it's the first semblance of affection he's gotten in his life. It's not that. It's their relationship develops naturally throughout the course of the movie. And it's really great. And then they kill him. I'm like, well, why can't you let us have nice things? And he's just like, oh, and he just the moment he bursts into the piano duet, I'm like, ah, yes. Freaking awesome. I love it. The animation's so gorgeous in this. It's so good. It's just, and Kaworu's just swishing his hair from side to side. The way they animate him, and then they touch their hands. It's great. It's my music. It's my jam. I could fangirl about it all day long because it's animated so wonderfully. It's the best thing about this movie is this damn piano duet. Absolutely the best thing. But it develops a relationship and actually has them collaborating and working together. I'm so all about it. And next to like the tree and it's blooming, it's gorgeous. Like what else could we ask for in this? And he says music is fun and it's amazing what two people can achieve. And Shinji gets the little smirky face. Yeah, like he's having fun again. Like this is like the first time he's had fun in a long time, right? And he's like, oh, I'd love to come back and talk to you again. And Kaworu's like, anytime. Like, anytime you want to, you know. It's like, let's do this again. You can stop by anytime, Shinji. I'll just be sleeping on my piano. You know, like I do. And he says, who are you? And he's like, I'm Nagisa Kaworu. But he says he's the first angel, which we established he has Adam's soul in there. He's a child bound by fate, just like you. But Shinji's not there. He's not in his room. He goes and takes Ray the books, but she's gone and she hasn't touched the books from before. I'm like, if you just walk 50 more feet, you'd find her. She's in the tubes over there. Just walk over there. Why can't you do that? And so then I like that Shinji, the next place he goes to that he feels any semblance of comfort is next to the piano. I like that shot of the tree waiting on Kaworu. He's like, oh, you're here early. He's like, well, I have nothing to do. So what else is there to worry about? And then we see them like playing and Shinji gets into it, right? He gets into it and they actually like show them playing the piano together. They're learning, they're communicating. It's great. It gets rainbow. I'm like, yes, hell yes. I'm all about it. The rainbow piano. Hell yes. I'm all here for it. And it almost seems like we get like the artwork that's a little bit more abstract, like Anno's work. I love that. It's great. It's wonderful. Like, look at you. How can I improve my piano playing? And he's like, you don't have to be good at it. Just produce music that feels good. It's like, this rainbow piano duet. I love it. He's like, I want to produce music that feels even better. How can I do that? And you just practice and more practice. Keep going till you're happy with it. Like, I love this scene. Like, this is the best part of the movie. And Shinji's even practicing when he's not at the piano. He's just practicing till he gets it down. It's great. And so then, and he thinks about it and falls asleep. And then he wants to know the truth, though. And he's like, he wants the device fixed that was his father. And he's like, okay, fine. He's like, I can do that. Leave it to me. He's like, I just have to get it working again. I can do that. I love that he's like, you can do it, right, Kaworu? And he's like, sure. And so Kaworu's like, that's fine. Don't worry about it. He says, we're friends after all. And then Shinji, he looks up at the sky and he's like, it's getting dark. And that's when they did the whole stargazing. He's like, he wants to stay there longer. And I'm like, yeah, them looking at the stars. It's a beautiful parallel to them in bed together from episode 24 when they were talking to one another. Except the thing about it is, in episode 24, that whole sequence was kind of like, Shinji felt kind of awkward during it because he didn't know what to think of Kaworu, right? They just had the bath scene and everything. And here, they've like become friends and established that they have a relationship with one another. And Kaworu, like Shinji opens up to him and he's like, nothing's changed after 14 years. And that stagnation, I feel like I can calm down because he's like, and it's kind of the weirdest thing for Shinji to say. He's like, I feel like since nothing's changed, he's like, I can stop worrying about myself. Like, everything's still going. The world kept spinning. It just because I was out of whack didn't mean that everything else stopped. And it's like, well, kind of. And he's like, it's hard to explain. And Kaworu's like, no, I get what you're saying. He's like, instead of seeking to change things, you prefer a void, merciless abyss of a world. And I'm like, wow, when you say it like that, Kaworu, it kind of seems a little bit chilling. He's like, it's just like you. And he's like, well, lying down here together is nice though, right? I didn't know it would feel so good. And then Shinji's like, well, we're just friends, right? It's no big deal. I just thought it'd be fun to watch the stars with you, that's all. And then him looking over, and then Kaworu is just like the bed pose, right? It's the bed shot of like, no, I was born to meet you. Mm-hmm. It's fun. And he has the blush on his face. Yeah. Even in the rebuilds, you cannot escape it. I was really born to meet you. God, they animate him great. And then the piano shrouded in mist. I do love the piano shrouded in mist next to the tree, right? So Shinji, when he gets ready though, the thing with the shirt, where he says the shirt's a little big, and he finds the tag on it, and it says Toji Suzahara. And it's all faded. Oof. And the idea that they just gathered shirts up from... I interpreted it as they gathered shirts up from the dead. And that's what they've been giving Shinji, because everyone died in the third impact. And Shinji's realizing it. That's what I gathered. Now, I could be totally wrong. Maybe it was some leftover shirts, and it just happened to be his shirt that they gathered up, and that reminded him. But, And so he's like, wow, Nagi said there's nothing you can't do. And he's like, knowledge is all this is. He's like, it's not that I'm super powerful. I just know what to do. It's only because I've been in this world a little longer than you have. Mm-hmm. He's like, I just have more experience. That's all. You've been in stasis for 14 years. It's fine. That's all, right? And so I'm going to go back. I accidentally stopped that. So yeah, he finds Nagisa. And the sad thing is that Shinji is scared. He's like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what happened to the city. I'm scared of everything. I just want to know the truth, right? So I do appreciate that Shinji asks the truth. He asks for the truth. He's like, I want somebody to give me answers. And Nagisa, he's like, okay, I could tell you the truth. You're not going to like it. It's not going to go over well, but I'll tell you if you want to, because we're friends. Because and this scene, and you could just tell Kaworu doesn't want to say anything. He's like, he knows that it's going to ruin things. It's going to make it bad. He's like, I just want to sit here and do piano duets with you, but we can't do that forever, can we? He's like, fine. He's like, do you want to know? And Shinji's like, mm-hmm. And then they go down. And I do find it hilarious that Kaworu's just skipping down these like creepy stairs that would terrify me, and like, no, it's no big deal. And Shinji's in a hazmat suit, but Kaworu's like, I was on the moon. I got this. I'm like, logistically, Shinji doesn't even question, but whatevers. But yeah, I do like the idea that he has to grip it. And then Kaworu comes back and offers his hand to help Shinji. Of course he does. Why does he have to be the most beautiful thing in the world in those shots? Like, I'm sorry, but honestly, I get why Shinji was all about Kaworu. How could you not be? He looks glorious. Like, this movie makes him look beautiful. It's like, yep, mm-hmm. And he reaches out his hand for him to grab. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's just great. So he tells him it's a little bit further when the clouds disperse. And then we see what all has been happening. And we see this it's the egg, right? It's the Lilith egg. It's the third impact that's not been finished. It's not been completed, right? And there's all the crosses and everything. We get it all explained. And he's like, this was the result of the third impact while you were merged with the O1 unit. This was the result of it. Like, yep. And you can see, like, there's all this nasty, like everything's just a big wasteland, and then they're kind of protected within this barrier. Mass extinctions aren't unusual on this planet. like it's been something happening for a while. Like he's just telling him, in fact, it helps drive evolution. Mm-hmm. So he's like, life has always changed itself to adapt to the world around it. And so we see everything is happening. He's like, Lilin changes the world instead of itself. And it's like, yeah, Kaworu's like, instead of the world changing things, the humanity changes the world instead of changing itself. Instead of humanity working on itself to make them all better people, it changes the world around them. It's like, okay, get the theme there. And then we see and so it performs rituals to evolve itself artificially. And we see all the apartments and stuff from the last film, they're all destroyed. And we see hands of the Evangelion. Mm-hmm. So it's like, yeah, it's sacrificed older life to create new life forms blessed with the fruits of life. Okay, so it just basically tried, and there's all these they look like angels, like Evangelions that are all failed, the failed versions, right? So basically saying that after the third impact, the Evas and angels were created, and there's this idea of artificial evolution. The befuddling thing about all of it is, okay, so what was Kaworu trying to do? So Kaworu's mission, okay, so I feel like I was trying to understand Kaworu's whole point here, because he came there in the Mach 6 he came there as the 12th angel. The 12th angel was the Mach 6, right? So he came there to stop Shinji and stop the third impact, right? To save Shinji because he likes Shinji. So he came there to stop it, but he was a tool of Seal to cause the impact, but he was acting against orders to save them. But then why did he stay with Gendo when he knew that Gendo's plan was to cause the impact? Because what happens, what's so befuddling and frustrating is that Kaworu stayed with Gendo the whole time. I feel like Kaworu almost took on a Kaji role in this film. I feel like Kaworu almost took on a Kaji role where Kaworu was like, okay, Seal has sent me down to cause the third impact, but I like Shinji, so I'm going to save Shinji. And then Gendo expects me to cause the third impact, but I'm gonna double deal against Gendo, and me and Shinji are gonna change the world back to the way it was because we can, using Cassius and Longinus. But then he realizes I've been played by Gendo. I guess I'm gonna end up causing the third impact anyway. I guess I'm gonna die anyway. I'm just like, for as smart as Kaworu is portrayed to be, he ends up being a pawn of Gendo's, and it's just kind of frustrating because I wanted more with Kaworu than him just... In the original series, it makes sense that Kaworu was an instrument of Seal. He went down there, and then in the end, he decided to let Shinji kill him rather than do what Seal wanted him to do. That motivation, that all made sense. Here, it seems like he just has to die because that's part of Kaworu's story. He has to die no matter what. So they try to make it work, but it's not as effective as it could have been, I guess. And so yeah, but Kaworu tells him everything. He's like, all this is an act of extinction that's been programmed since time immemorial. He's like, it's just part of the cycle. It's just as a cycle of everything. NERV calls this the Human Instrumentality Project. He's like, it's just something that happens. And Shinji's just like, well, NERV did this? This is all NERV's fault? He's like, is that why Masato's fighting him? He's like, what's my dad doing? Why am I helping him? And Kaworu's just like, yeah, about that. He's like, Akari Shinji-kun. Which is exactly how Masato addresses him. So that's interesting. He's like, the EVA 1 unit awakened and opened the doors of Guff. He explains what's happened. He's like, well, NERV kind of started this whole thing, but it all awoken because at this point Rei had merged with Lilith. You merged with that triggered the third impact. So yeah, Lilin calls that the near third impact. You are the cause of all of this. And I'm actually like, what I like about this is that Kaworu and Shinji's relationship, Kaworu doesn't shy away from just telling Shinji like it is. And he's blunt with him and honest with him. But it's like, that it makes their relationship feel earned. Like they had to communicate and work through all of this and help Shinji through everything. And it feels more earned, whereas Asuka and them didn't want to tell him anything at the beginning. And then at the end, suddenly he's supposed to just go along with her. It's like, And just Shinji having the Luke Skywalker no moments where he's like, no, he's like, I just want to save Ayanami. He's like, that's all I wanted to do. And Kaworu's like, well, yeah, that may have been the case, but that still was the cause. I like that this movie doesn't shy away from being like, no, Shinji, your act of love and compassion caused the apocalypse. I like that they're just like, nope. Kaworu's like, nope, that's just what happened. And Shinji's like, well, then what was the point of me being kind and compassionate? And Kaworu's like, well, it's too much for me to take. There's nothing I can do. And then Kaworu says, yeah, you can't do anything about the past. He's like, Rafiki, you're like, you can't change the past, but you wanted to know the truth, so I'm telling you. And he's like, Lilin punished you for your sins. He was like, he didn't say Lilith, he said Lilin. So like the humans, he's like, the humans punished you for doing this. That's why they put that collar on you. He's like, wouldn't that be the thing on your neck? He's like, yeah. And then Shinji's like, my sins? He's like, I didn't do anything. I was just being nice and trying to save Rei. And it's like, well, he's like, humanity doesn't think that way. Again, like the Jesus metaphor is there. It's like, Jesus like didn't do anything wrong, was just trying to save people, ends up getting crucified and died for it anyway. Humanity, punished him regardless. So it's the metaphor is pretty on the nose there. And Kaworu's like, there is no unforgivable sin. So it's kind of odd. It's like, in the original series, Kaworu was like space Jesus. And here in this moment, he's almost making Shinji seem like the Jesus figure. And he's just like kind of godlike too. It's interesting. There's always hope. So in here, Kaworu says that they can, no matter what the circumstance is, he's like, we can still move forward. Like, we can't redo what has happened, but we can move forward and change the future. And I do like the shot of the garden where it's all just a wreck. Like the garden is completely barren, which is curious because deep within NERV, everything's like growing back up again. But yeah, I just like Kaworu. He's just sitting there. And he's just in the garden looking at it all destroyed. So that's curious. Like Kaworu just sitting there watching the desolated garden being like, I feel like Kaworu knows he's probably going to die, but And so then this part, they're like, Seal's child has contacted the third child and showed him the outside world. And I like the Fuyu-chan's like thinking of Shinji being like, I wonder how he's going to cope with it. How's he going to handle it? Are you sure about this, Ikari? And then Gendo says, we will rewrite Seal's scenario. So Gendo is still trying to change whatever Seal's pathway was, but to what end, right? Everything in existence is a tool for that purpose. So he hasn't merged with Adam that we know of yet. So, and then I like the Fuyu's like, you're saying your son wouldn't benefit from seeing how you live? He's like, do you think your son ought to know more about you, Gendo? Maybe know what your plan is? Maybe know what you're doing? And Gendo's like, I'll have to disagree. And then I like that we're seeing Shinji's room and everything's like in disarray. It's like the sheets and everything are all like a shamble, and it's a nice representation of how he feels in that moment. Why is everything so messed up? Again, I feel like the show is very self-referential there. Why is it all messed up? But yeah, so he's like, oh, right. I managed to save Ayanami. Isn't that good enough? Well, and that's the crazy thing is that Shinji, playing on his psyche, he thinks that he's like, well, the world's a mess, but at least I saved someone, right? At least it wasn't a total waste. And then we find out that no, you didn't save Rei. She's still in the tube, and she's seeing this version of herself, right? I do think Rei looks really pretty there. But yeah, we see like we're getting like seeing her like looking sadly at herself. Okay. in the tube, like Shinji, if you'd walked 50 more feet, you would see that Rei is naked in the tube. What's going on? Like, it seems like it feels like it is setting up for Thrice Upon a Time to be End of Evangelion-esque. Now, what we do with that, I don't know. Because I feel like we've already had End of Evangelion. So, how are we doing it even more? And then Shinji getting mad at the book stacked up. She's gone again. And she still hasn't touched the books. And Shinji's just mad at this point. I like that Shinji gets mad. He shows emotion. He's like, just, what is happening? He's like, I don't get it. He's like, what the heck is wrong with Rei? And he just happens to run into Fuyu-chan at the right moment. I love this. And so then again, the nerve symbol and everything is all out of whack. It's kind of messed up. And then Fuyu-chan, I love that Shinji bows to him and he's going to move on. And he's like, third child, do you play shogi? And he's like, well, I know the rules. And he's like, that's good enough. Let's have a game. And he's like, I'll start without my rook, bishop, and gold generals. Which I feel like that's maybe saying something like, I don't have my rook, my bishop, my gold generals. It's like, is it referencing the fact that all of his fellow members from NERV have left him and it's all him by himself? And then Shinji's like, okay, I guess I'll go here. And he's like, calm your mind. And like Fuyu-chan tells him, he's like, it's critical to winning a battle to be calm. He's like, you'll lose in 31 moves. And then I love this shogi game. Like, again, if you want to give me fan service, you give me the duet, the piano duet, and you give me Fuyu playing a game of shogi with Shinji. That's all I need. Like, these are probably my favorite moments of the whole series. And he's like, look, let's do it this way. Maybe you'll enjoy this more. We start from the beginning. And he's like, thank you for accompanying an old man with his hobby. I'm like, Fuyu-chan. And so they slowly start to take pieces one by one, right? And he's like, you see, I'm rather timid too. And I love that. I love that him trying to connect with Shinji, being like, I'm kind of like you, right? I'm a little timid myself. So I needed a chance to talk to you and to do it this way. Again, it's so cool. And he's like, do you remember your mother? And somebody talking to him about his mom. Gendo can't do it, so let's have Fuyu-chan do it. I'm like, this part was interesting. And he's like, I don't remember my mom. I was very young. And he's like, and my father got rid of all of her belongings. And Fuyu's like, well, that's fine. I've got a photo. And we don't see what's written on the back of the photo, which is so aggravating, right? We don't see what's written on the back of the photograph, right? We can't see it. And that part is sad, right? But he sees the photo and that woman with the glasses. Okay, the woman with the glasses, and then we see the guy with the funky hair, right? And another man. I'm like, is the woman with the glasses, is that supposed to be Asuka's mom? Is she supposed to be Asuka's mother? Or is she supposed to be Mari's mom? Either one. Is she Mari's mom? Is she Asuka's mom? Are Mari and Asuka sisters? Do we even know? But yeah, she looks like Asuka, right? The girl, she has the red hair and it's pulled back in a little barrette. And the one guy with the hair, maybe he's supposed to be her dad. And then Shinji's like, well, wait a minute. He's like, that looks like Ayanami. And then he says, she's your mother. Her maiden name was Ayanami Yui. She was my student. So we make this change. It's a very curious change. That we make the change of calling it's Yui Ayanami. Honestly, that feels like a long time coming, and that I'm totally fine with that change. It makes so much more sense. I liked the bait and switch in the original of having Gendo take on Yui's name, that she was Yui Ikari and Gendo took her name. I do like that bait and switch that they did in the series. But then the Ayanami name, we're always left with wondering, well, why Ayanami? Why that name? And here, it being her maiden name, and Rei being clones of her, and Gendo introducing Rei as being Ayanami, being his wife's maiden name, all that makes much more sense, right? All that makes much more sense. And then he's like, she's in control of this. She is now the control system of the O1 unit. Like, he just explains it for us, right? And Shinji's like, excuse me? And then, like, the light And when he says the power's finally back, the power's back on, it's like, oh, it's a great little analogy for Shinji gaining this knowledge. And then we see this, the very early prototype of the EVA control systems. This is where Yui proposed the idea of direct entry into the cores, right? I love it. And tested it with herself as the test subject. I want to get a picture of that. Yeah, so he basically explains everything that had happened in that moment, right? And Shinji's like, you're joking. You saw it too, but your memories have been erased. Mm-hmm. And so we actually get to see what it was like when she was infusing herself with the core, which I think is kind of cool. We see the core there. We see this technology. I actually am kind of definitely okay with this. I like seeing her, like, she looks like an angel being put into the core. It's neat, right? She has the halo. She has the wings. It's a very cool visual. I like it. Seeing her, like, go in, and I'm fine with that. And she vanished right here. And then, oh my god, Fuyu-chan with the heads behind him, though. The floating heads, oh my gosh. And only her data was left behind for the Ayanami series. Like, just all the heads. Oh my god. The Rei Ayanami, you know, is one of her clones. Oh my god. And the fact that we see the one head with the eye staring out of it, oh, it's creepy. It's a creepy image. It's bizarre. She's been preserved within the O1 unit just like your mother. And Shinji's like, well, I feel awkward now after having all these encounters with Rei, and it's been my mom the entire time. That's good to know. Shinji gets a massive truth bomb thrown at him in this entire series. He just gets the truth, like, here you go, have fun. And it's like, oh my god. Like, there you go. He's like, no way. And then it crumbles. Destroying the world is too easy. Rebuilding it is not so simple. It's like, yeah, no shit. Oh my god. The world lacks reversibility, just like time. He's like, we can bust down this world and rebuild it, but you can't alter anything. You cannot redo. Once it's happened, it's happened. He's like, so do the hearts of people. He's like, once you've broken down the heart of something, it's hard you've got to just basically try to mend it. You can't just replace it. He's like, that's why Akari is sacrificing everything he has so his wish can be granted. Now, granted, we don't get to know what that wish is. He doesn't spell it out for Shinji, but he does offer Shinji some insight into why Gendo is the way that he is. And Shinji's like, okay. And he's sacrificing his own soul to do so. He's like, I just wanted to tell you a bit of the truth about your father. So yeah, and this goes back to when Fuyu was like, shouldn't you let Shinji know a little bit about yourself? Shouldn't you let him understand you a little bit more, Gendo, of why you're doing the things that you're doing? And Gendo's like, no, I'm going to be mysterious and brooding, no. And Fuyu's like, well, then I'm going to take matters into my own hands, damn it, and tell the boy myself. And so he does. And Shinji's just like, Shinji getting up and just walking away like, got it, thanks for all that. We don't see his face. And then we slowly go back to Fuyu-chan being like, 'tis a wretched role I'm playing. Yui-kun. Damn, and the photograph on the shogi board. Okay. I hope this will suffice. Okay, also, the head, the embodied head of Yui that's just sitting there, and Gendo is creepily staring at it. Nope. Absolutely not. And we go back. I went too far. Yeah, so there's all these like hands and stuff reaching for the head. It is such a creepy visual. And it makes Gendo just seem that much creepier, right? Because we go back to the nasty head. He's like, cutting from her like happy with Shinji as a baby to her creepy corpse head. Nope. And then Gendo just standing there looking at it. Like he looks at Rei saying the time of the final contract is upon us. And he has like the thing, he's like, we'll meet again soon, Yui. Yep, and then we see Rei of course. And she sees Shinji, and Shinji has stacked up all the books that he brought her. I did love that Shinji gets mad at her. He's like, I gave you all these books. Why haven't you read any of them? He's like, why aren't you reading the books? I love that visual of her standing as tall as the books. Again, it is a nice metaphor of like her knowledge that she could gain to act for herself and have her own agency. But instead, she's just following Gendo's orders because she's just this mindless clone. She's not the Rei that he knew. And she's like, I wasn't ordered to. And he's like, you weren't ordered, huh? And he just knocks over the book stack. Then don't bother. Oh my God, it's great. It's great. He's like, you're Ayanami, right? And she's like, yes, I'm Ayanami Rei. And he's like, I saved you back then, didn't I? And she's like, I don't know. And I love Shinji getting mad at this moment. Like him just getting mad about her being a clone. Like in the original series, he was just so shell-shocked. And then things went bonkers. But here, I like that we get a moment of Shinji just being like, I hate this. This sucks. Oh, it's great. Mm-hmm. And she just looks, she's like Akari-kun. And he goes back and forth and like just dawdles around with it. I will say, it's not something I dislike or that's frustrating. But as he's coming to grips that he didn't save Ayanami, that everything he did was pretty much... He just pointlessly... He didn't save Ayanami. He started the third apocalypse. It's just everything... He's just like... He realizes that he kind of failed. Shinji's like, I failed in my mission. I didn't save Rei. I'm part of this plot. He's like, I am just going along with the motions of someone else's orders myself. So Shinji's kind of at his lowest point at this point. And I do like that they try to do what they did in the original series, where we have like all the inner thoughts and everything's confusing and messed up. It is a little disorienting to watch. I can't rewatch it. It almost made me sick watching it during the actual reaction. But I do like what they attempt to do. That part's fine. But I almost wish it had been like the original series. It was like the black screen and like the white text. I do like, though, Shinji like chucking the Walkman, where he's like, nope. Him just throwing it against the wall because he's mad. Almost like it's like he's mad at his father and he just chucks the Walkman away. I like that. Good on you, Shinji, for getting mad at Gendo and expressing your anger. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, they're getting the 13th EVA unit, like, undone and released from its prison. And, like, God. And so then they send Kaworu to go get Shinji. They're like, well, we're ready to go. All the tools have been gathered. And is it a little bit like on the nose that they rip open this egg and pull open the EVA unit out of? Is it a little bit on the nose? Yes. And then I love that we cut to Kaworu going, like, just banging down the piano. Mm-hmm. And holding it. Yep. And just, oh, God. And him saying the time has come. This is it, Ikari Shinji-kun. But in for what? And I love that he's like, no, he doesn't want to go. I like that this relationship between Kaworu and Shinji. Because in the original, you could argue that it was just Shinji being starved for affection, him just wanting to be loved, so that the moment he got the semblance of affection, he like latched onto it and went with it. And you could argue that that was, you know, he shouldn't have done that it was naive. But here, they actually take the time to develop Kaworu and Shinji's relationship, and Shinji argues with Kaworu. He's like, no, I don't want to do this. Like, why should I have to go through this? And he like laments to him, and Kaworu, who is the embodiment of the perfect boyfriend, is just, he's like, I don't want to be a pilot ever again. I couldn't save Ayanami. He's like, no, but nothing ever good came of me doing that. He's like, I've had enough. I don't want to do anything. And Kaworu says, well, nothing good comes from replaying your painful memories either. He's like, nothing good comes from dwelling on the past. Now, in Kaworu and Gendo and Fuyu's defense, if they did nothing and they just sat there, because I thought about this as the credits were going, I was like, as if they'd just done nothing, if Shinji had not piloted the EVA and they did nothing, then Masato would have came and probably killed Gendo and killed Ikari, or killed Gendo, killed Fuyu-chan, killed Kaworu, and then took Shinji back, and he would have been just like a prisoner of his own grief, right? So, and he would have probably felt bad forever about it. So, on the one hand, I get why Shinji decides to pilot the EVA alongside Kaworu, because he's like, especially after Kaworu's speech about changing things. But there isn't an element that I'm like, why did we go this route? But we'll get to it. But Kaworu's so understanding. He's like, nothing good comes from replaying these painful memories. And he's like, nothing is ever good. Shinji's like, nothing's good here in this world. He's like, you showed it to me yourself. He's like, you showed me the blood red world beyond salvation. Eva was what changed it. So he's like, just to use Eva to change it once again. He's like, that's what Kaworu's like, nice words. He's like, I can't trust the Eva. Anything. He's like, I can't trust Masato, my father, the Evas. I can't trust any of it. And Kaworu's like, well, I want you to trust me. He's like, I trust you. And he's like, I can't. And I like that. I like that Shinji's like, he doesn't just blindly follow Kaworu. He laments it. He's like, he's like spitting out everywhere. He's like, how can I trust you? And Kaworu's like, Masato and her crew put this thing on me. He's like, I'll die if I get near them again. He's like, they told me to never pilot the Eva, and if I do it, they'll kill me. And Kaworu's like, fine. And then this part here, he's like, I don't care about the Eva anymore. This part here and they just so sensually draw Kaworu with like the hands over him. And I thought he was going in to hug him, but no, he takes off the collar. And he's like, I understand. I'll shoulder the burden of Lilin's curse and the risk of the Eva awakening. And he's like, oh. Now my question was in the episode, why couldn't he just leave it? Why couldn't he just leave it and not put the collar on at all? Why couldn't he have done that? Right? Why not? Why could he have not? I guess that's one thing that's befuddling is the collar. Why? He was able to take it off. Why didn't he just throw it away? Why did he just get rid of it? And I know that there'd be somebody saying, well, it might have blown up or been a bomb and exploded if he hadn't put it on. Like it was going to detonate if nobody was wearing it. But I'm like, we've already seen that they are well outside of Masato's range to detonate it. So it doesn't matter. So that is one part that I get really frustrated and befuddled by. I'm like, why did he put the collar on? Just toss it. Toss it. Everybody wins. Just get rid of it. Like, why'd you have to put it on? Except to make it a way for you to die conveniently for the plot's sake. I'm like, no. And to be symbolic. I'm like, no. I know it was to prove his trust to Shinji, that he's taking on this burden for Shinji and to prove that he trusts him. But I'm just like, there was no reason for it. You didn't have to do it. He's like, Lilin made this because it was afraid of me to begin with. So he's like, he made it because it was afraid of Shinji activating the angel that they could possibly be in from the start. So he's like, but I'm like, just, you didn't have to put the collar on. He's like, I was going to take it from you eventually. I'm like, but what? Okay, I guess. No. No! I was like, no, you could have just thrown it away. Because I guess what he was saying was, if we were in a situation together, I would have taken it from you anyway. I would have shouldered this burden for you regardless. So I was going to die for you to begin with. But I'm like, you didn't have to do it. They can't detonate it from there. Just throw it away. Throw it outside. Put it in the piano. You did not have to put it on. And then I do, again, that part, mind-boggling. But I do love that they have, like, the player. So in between, Gendo is cock-blocking Shinji and Kaworu from getting together. We have, God, that player in between them. And it's the representation of the Hedgehog's Dilemma. That tape player is the representation. I do love the shot of the two hands being close because it's a representation of, one, the Hedgehog's Dilemma. Shinji puts on the headset to block everyone out. So it's a representation of that barrier of communication between him and Kaworu. Two, it's a representation because it was his father's player. It's a representation of his father and the fact that his father is keeping Shinji and Kaworu from being together, just like in the original series. There's so many layers of it, and I love that a lot about it, right? And he says, your only hope lies with the two spears left at the epicenter. And he's like, they're the keys to the Instrumentality Project. He's like, if we get those, if we take those spears for ourselves, then NERV no longer can trigger the fourth impact. And we can use them together with the Unit 13 and repair the world. So it's almost like Kaworu's like a double agent. He's like, hey, I know your dad has this plan, but if you and I work together, we'll take the Lance of Longinus and the Spear of Cassius, which has been established, and we'll just do things for ourselves. It'll be great. We'll stop the world. We won't trigger an impact. Everything will be fine. we'll make the world back the way we wanted to, right? We'll just do it for ourselves. And I do love that in that moment, Shinji looks like he's in such ease. He's like, I guess we could do that. Like, in that moment, he's like, sure, let's do that. Why not? And he's like, I'm sure you can do it. And then it's like these two together. I'm like, ugh. And he's like, yeah, we can do it, you mean. And then the two of them, he's like, it's a double entry system. Mm-hmm. He's like, let's become the hope of Lilin together. Ha ha ha! Ha ha ha! What you need most right now is hope. And he's like, so that's what I'm going to be for you. As well as atonement and composure. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's just like, he's like, we'll just do this together. We'll become the hope of the world. You can atone for your sins and compose yourself, and we'll just do it by saving everyone. And he's like, you're amazing. And he's like, you know everything. Only because I'm always thinking about you. I was like, oh my God, the flirting! The flirting. Oh, shut up. Mm-hmm. And then, just the way that they look at each other. I'm just gonna, the Discord is just gonna be pictures of Kaworu and Shinji the whole time. And the moment he said, thank you, Nagisa-kun, and kind of leans in and did that, and he's like, just call me Kaworu. And in that moment, they're like so close to one another, I really thought they were gonna kiss. He's like, well, you can call me Shinji then. And then he's just sitting there like a cat that ate the canary. I really thought they were gonna kiss. I was dead set that he was gonna lean in and kiss him. That's really what I thought. He's like, it's the same as playing the piano. Good things will happen if we're together, Shinji-kun. Let's go, Kaworu-kun. I'm like, and then they suit up together, right? Just why? Why can't we have nice things? Why can't we have nice things? Makes sense. And then they have the double penetration, double entry system with the entry plugs. Mind out of the gutter, y'all. And he has the tape player as he's in this rainbow world next to Kaworu. I love it. Yeah. It's just them together, right? And then we get that shot of them together real quick. Yep. And he's looking at the CD player, the tape player, like, we're going to do this to defy my dad, even though we're actually working along with my dad's plans flawlessly. But yeah, they're like next to one another. I'm like, this should be the best thing ever. Although, of course, there's like a shield in between them. I thought they could really reach out and touch each other. No, they can't. Because that's not how the EVA works. And he's like, let's do this. Let's go for it. And so then they get an activation signal. I guess because parts of NERV they took with them with Will. And so they're notified whenever an EVA is confirmed. And so I guess that's how they've been battling the EVAs all along. But yeah, then they go and Rei comes along with them. And Shinji being like, looking at Kaworu and he's like, we're not alone. Oh, and he's like, oh, you mean the Mach 9? This one. He's like, it's only here to support us. It'll look out for any signs of Will activity. It's just the two of us would have been enough. Yeah, and so I love the idea that we have the idea of Rei having this giant, like, death scythe coming down with them. But Shinji's mad because he doesn't acknowledge Rei as... It's kind of sad, right? He doesn't acknowledge her being Ayanami, and Rei's like, I'm not me, what's going on? That part was a little, I won't put it as frustrating, but it was very interesting. Because we know that Asuka's had animosity towards Rei, but now Shinji has animosity towards this Rei because it's not the Rei that he saved. It's a clone. So we know that they're all three together going into the final movie. So I'm going to be curious to see if Shinji is able to cope with that, what he's going to talk to Rei about, how he's going to handle that, if him and Asuka are just going to bully Rei the whole time because she's a clone. Like, what are we going to do with that? I'm so curious to see what we end up with that. And so, yeah, then all those failed to become infinity. They're all EVA units that failed. They failed to evolve properly. It's really gross. And he's like, don't worry about them. He's like, don't worry about them. They're just failed EVA units. They failed to get where we are. It's fine. And so we got to get to Lilith. And so then, like, he's like, we were designed to do this together, Shinji. And Shinji's like, sure. He's like, so happy. And then he's like, think about our piano duets. And that's how they sync up together. And it's like this big infinity loop of them together. Like, just, the shipper in me is like having a field day, right? And then they managed to make it down to Lilith, the bottommost level of Central Dogma. And so we get down to where Lilith was. I do love that we have that, and we have the aircraft carrier, right? And all the skulls of the Evas. They're like all the Eva, I guess they're Eva skulls. They're not quite as deranged as the Eva skulls were. They're huge, but they're not like, I guess they're all the Evas that evolved and couldn't, the angels and Evas that evolved and couldn't make it. But we see like an aircraft carrier. And then Lilith is just like decomposing. It used to be her. It's her corpse now. Yeah, from where the two spears came down, right? But wasn't that where... So I feel like they... Okay, this is making more sense now. This makes more sense now. Okay. They went down, Masato and them, during the third impact with the use of Mari, and then managed to make it down to Lilith that had merged with... Rei and Shinji in the O1 unit. Kaworu put the spear through it to stop the process, to stop the third impact, because he wants to save Shinji, right? So what happened is during the same time, I'm assuming Mari managed alongside with Masato and Ritsuko and them to get the O1 unit and pry it away. They took the O1 unit that had Shinji inside of it, and Rei is gone now, so they managed to like do that. Rei said she was merged with the angel that was Lilith and that Shinji couldn't save her. He didn't. He managed to get pulled away along with the O1 unit, and Masato and the crew took him away, and they've been trying to extract him this whole time, and they finally were able to. Meanwhile, Kaworu stuck around with Gendo to try to get to where they could get Shinji back, and new Rei that's in the O9 unit was reforged, and Kaworu's been waiting for this moment to take the two lances and to redo everything and to make Shinji happy. It all makes sense now. It all makes sense now. I pieced together the puzzle. Would have been nice to have some flashbacks to put that together, but it all makes sense now. Okay. But he's like, we risked our lives to protect Lilith, and now the head's gone. It's kind of like it's like the headless. It's like you can see the O1 unit, like the shell of it where it was, right? And the two lances pierced through it, like from back in, and he's like, is that an Eva? Oh, and it's his Eva unit. Okay. So it's what it's become, having been used by Lilith and modified to be autonomous. Okay, so so there is something missing there. Okay, so there is something. I thought I had a grasp on everything, damn it! So in this one, he speared himself and connected himself. Wait! But he's connected himself with Lilith. Oh, what? Okay, because that was the one. Because at the end of the second rebuild, Kaworu came down, having speared the O1 unit and the angel with Rei together. He came down like he was ready to, like, I feel like I've missed half a movie. What happened when Kaworu came down? Did they manage to get the O1 unit? I feel like they took the O1 unit to go make the mothership, and they extracted Shinji from it, and that's where we are now. And Asuka and Mari have been there the whole time, but then I figured that Kaworu came down and was working with Gendo and Fuyu-chan, but then why did Kaworu drive spears through himself and Lilith? When did that happen? Why did that happen? What's going on? No! Like, what are those? We came to get those spears. And he's like, yes, Longinus and Cassius. 2 souls are required to bring both lances back, so we needed 2 units. So that's why we have a double entry system. And he's like, couldn't you have gone over there with Rei? And he's like, no. He's like, no, a replica of Lilith won't do. We can't use a clone. Okay, so that has established that Shinji is not a clone. Shinji is not a clone. He's just been extracted from the O1 unit. Good. Glad we've made that clear. A replica won't work. Her soul is somewhere else. Hmm. And so they go up to do it. And so up until now, I guess I got that Kaworu was trying to help Shinji feel better and become better. And Shinji's like, okay. And then as we go, here's the part that's frustrating to me. Kaworu says something's wrong. And he's like, what's the matter? And he says, something's wrong. He's like, this is weird. He's like, both spears have morphed into the same shape. He's like, we should hurry and pull the spears. This is the part that's frustrating, okay? Shinji's impatience. Shinji's impatience and not listening to Kaworu. This is the part that's frustrating to me out of the whole damn movie, is because I'm like, you've said this entire movie, Shinji, that Kaworu was this amazing person. He knows everything. He's had experience. You can rely upon him for everything. You've pretty much said he was the bee's knees. And now when Kaworu is like, now wait a minute, this seems suspicious. Maybe we should hold on and wait a second. Now Shinji's impatient. He's like, oh, we should just hurry up and pull the spears out. I'm like, why would you want to be impatient? He's like, it's the only reason I'm piloting the Eva. So, and then that's when Mari and them attack him. So on the one hand, I do get why Shinji's impatient. He's like, I only agreed to do this so we could do this one mission and get it over with. But I'm like, Shinji, you're not thinking of what happens after you do the mission. You're not thinking of, Kaworu has just spent the entire movie telling you need to think of the future and be diligent in planning for the future. And you're not doing that. You're like, oh, let's just hurry up and get this over with so I can stop being in the Eva suit. So I can stop being in the Eva, because Shinji wants to have his cake and eat it too, right? He's like, oh, I want to help you, Kaworu, in changing the world, but in order for us to do that, I have to be in the Eva suit. But I don't want to be in the Eva suit because then I'm letting Masato and Sakura down, and I don't want to do that. So I'm like, Shinji, maybe you should wait and listen to what Kaworu has to say. Maybe there's some importance to this. Maybe we should stop. But he also, it makes sense why Shinji's impatient too, because Kaworu's wearing the damn choker, and Kaworu knows that when the others show up, they're going to kill Kaworu. They're going to detonate it. So he wants to try to get the spears out and reshape the world fast enough that they're not going to kill Kaworu. So I get it, but I'm also like, Kaworu may have a big point here of why we should. And then Asuka, I'm on board with the fight between Asuka and Rei and all them. I like that this movie is built up to them fighting one another. It's kind of cool. I like it. I think it's a neat twist. But he's like, I'm going to pilot the Eva and change the world. Yes, you are. Just not in the way that you think you are. And Asuka's like, you're a brat. And no, she's like, then don't pilot. If you want to change the world, then stop piloting it. Oh my God. And then Rei coming up with the scythe. I love Rei versus Asuka with the scythe and the sword. It's great. And she's like, you're always late to support fire. And so then Mari says, vessels of atoms. I'll at least stop you in your tracks. So vessel of atoms. Like, she's just talking about how, so Mari seems to know that they're going to become angels. Why? We don't know. Mari's okay in this movie. I like Mari more in this movie. I like when Mari and Asuka are fighting together and they're dynamic. Mari's okay. I'm not still sold on her character yet. I do like Asuka in this. And there's these little like blue angels that float around. It's great. Fighting Asuka. And he's like, these are our spears of hope. We need to go and get them. He's like, and she said, you should be minding your own business. She's like, are you trying to cause the third impact again? And he's like, I'm not. And he's like, we can use the spears to fix everything, except you can't, because it's all part of Gendo's plan. I'm like, oh, Shinji. I feel bad for Shinji, because Shinji literally believes that he is so convinced himself. He's like, if I do the thing, I'm going to save the world. And Asuka's like, no, you're not. And Kaworu's like, well, maybe we're not. And then Shinji's like, and Asuka's like, ugh. She's like, you are a brat. And he's like, well, you're clueless. I was like, oh my God, I love it. I love that they just argue with each other. He's like, well, you're just clueless. He like just dishes it back to her. And then when he looks over to Kaworu, he's like, you could help too. And Kaworu's like, I've made a huge mistake. We should not be here. I like Kaworu's like, I didn't think this through. He's like, we need both spears. But why do they look the same? But these spears are the same. This isn't right. And he's like, come on, Kaworu. And he's like, oh. He's like, I get it now, Lilin. I get what you're planning. Oh, that's so creepy. Like the eyes bleeding on Yui and everything. and all them reaching for it. Ugh. It's such a creepy image. But I'm like, Kaworu, if you get it, why are you, can't just spell it out? And they're like, can you see me, Seal's fill-in pilot? You should get out of there before you turn into the vessels of Adam. So Mari seems to know all this stuff. Now, okay. Well, just, that's not what I was ordered. And she says, how straight-laced can you get? Your original was a lot friendlier, you know. And Ray's like, what's going on? So, another me. Yeah, like Ray's figuring out that she's a clone. Mari is like on board with whatever chaos happens. She's just like, let's just let it go. She doesn't care. And then Asuka and Shinji are fighting. Kaworu's trying to be like, trying to deal with his existential crisis of what's going on. There's all this stuff happening. And he's like, Kaworu, what happened to you? And Kaworu's just like, about that. He's like, Kaworu contemplating is interesting. Because I'm like, and the visuals are great. Like, it all looks really good. And the two of these two fighting one another, it's great. I like it. And then she's like waiting on her battery and everything. And he's like, let's use this chance to grab the spears. And then Asuka's like, I can't believe he actually hit a girl. And I'm like, well, he's fighting to the death with you. You started the fight. I'm like, Asuka, what did you think he was going to do? And then Mari gives her the spare battery. Okay. All right. And so meanwhile, Shinji's like, well, Kaworu's not responding, so I'm just going to go and get the spears since Kaworu's not saying anything. And he says, stop. And at this point, I got really frustrated because Kaworu's like, you need to stop. And he's like, I have a bad feeling about this. And he's like, we can't stop now. Remember what we came all this way for? But I'm like, but Kaworu's just told you that stuff's not right. He's got a bad feeling. I'm like, maybe you should stop and hear Kaworu out. Like, let Kaworu work through it. And he says, don't do it. These aren't the right... He spells it out. He says, these aren't the right spears. He's like, these aren't the ones we're looking for. These are not the droids we're looking for, Shinji. We should not do this. He's like, what do you mean not our spears? As he's still crawling to it. He's like, no. He says, you're the one who said we needed the spears. He's like, well, yes, he did, but not the ones that aren't right. He's like, this is the part I'm like, no, Kaworu said it in black and white. He's like, this isn't what we're looking for. We shouldn't grab these strange objects that are not the things we're looking for. But he does it anyway. And he separates himself from Kaworu. And he says, oh, and the control system. Yeah. So the control system just goes like into autopilot, right? Or no, it's just Shinji. I'll take the spears for Kaworu-kun and everyone else saying. So he cut Kaworu out. He separated Kaworu from him and went into like auto mode himself. Shinji. No! Why did you do that? He said he was doing it for everyone's sake. He's like, that way the world's going to be restored. And then even Masato will be fine with me. And Asuka's like, well, shit, no. And then, so they go to like fire these bullets at him. And like they get the bullets down in them. And she's like, oh, it doesn't have an AT field. No, because this thing is literally like, it does, yeah, the unit is literally like Adam incarnate. Yep. And then it has like the 4 arms come out to grab the spears. And Shinji goes and grabs them. I'm like, on the one hand, in the original series, you could argue that Shinji was backed up against a wall and was forced to start the third impact without, he was forced to start the third impact without any agency, and that's frustrating. Here, Shinji has all the agency, and Kaworu's like, you shouldn't do this because of this very important, distinct reason, and Shinji chooses to do it anyway. And Kaworu's like, don't do it. And everyone's telling Shinji to stop doing it, and he does it anyway! He does it anyway. And he's like, look, we did it. And I'm like, bitch, no, that was not what you should have done. And then Lilith explodes. Yui's head explodes. Gendo's covered in a sea of blood. He tells Fuyu to start. And it's like they have these two devices, and then suddenly out of Lilith comes that unit that was the 6th unit. And he's like, it was an angel. Mm-hmm. And it was combining with Adam. That's all it had to do. Yep, this is bad. The 12th angel's still alive. And and then everything just gets crazy from there. It's just the 3rd impact resuming. I'm like, but I thought the 6th unit coming down, and yeah, Rey slices its head off, okay? I was ordered to. But then the angel gets out of it, right? And then connects with everything. Like, it connects around. Yeah, just kind of like what it did in the last rebuild, except now we're starting the same thing over again from the last one. But my question is, in the last movie, the angel fused with Rey, right? And Shinji fused with it and caused the 3rd impact. And here, it's fusing with Kaworu and them to cause the 4th impact again, right? And so, okay. I was like, but why is the 6th one down there? What happened between it stabbing Shinji in the end of the 2nd movie to it being connected with Lilith? That gap in time has not been explained to us. And I feel like there's like half a film that I'm missing that maybe we'll get in the last movie, but then, yeah, no. And then Mari's like, nope, it's already formed a new core. It's going to start the impact again. There's nothing we can do about it. I do like that Mari has all of these, like, it looks like she's drinking blood. She's just got, like, juice boxes. And she's sitting there with, like, a teacup there. Like, is it, like, blood orange or something? And she says, I want to see what terrible things will happen once the final angel is defeated. So, she's wanting to see what's going to happen after Kaworu dies. Because if Kaworu's the final angel, what will happen when he dies? Okay. Mari's kind of yandere. That checks. But yeah, so then we have all this forming. It's starting to form like it looks like Rey. Yeah, it looks like Yui. And Rey's like, what the hell? She's like, why does that thing look like me? What am I? I do like that Rey's questioning this, being like, what the hell am I? What's going on? I do like that this clone of Rey is starting to question things. And then it's like, Baka Shinji, you messed up. The controls aren't working. What's going on? And Kaworu's like, welp. And then Kaworu's like, I didn't think that I, the 1st angel, would fall to become the 13th angel. He's like, I was originally Adam, the 1st angel, and now I'm the last one. And he's like, what are you talking about? And Kaworu's like, I told you to stop, and you didn't listen to me. He's like, he says, the beginning and the end are one and the same. I expected no less from the King of Lilin, your father. So the King of Lilin. So Gendo is the King of Lilin. The King of Humanity is Gendo? That's terrifying. I don't know if I like that. And Shinji's just like, the fudge? And so they have... So the blue type, the blood blue type from the DSS choker. All right, so they acknowledge that Kaworu is the 13th angel. And so then Gendo's like, we're going to amend the Dead Sea Scrolls. We're changing the script up. We've been changing it this whole film. And Fuyu is slowly, like, powering down Seal to where they no longer have any power. And then Gendo goes on this, like, big monologue about the fruits of knowledge. He's like, you've changed the form of your souls. You're still creatures who have tasted the fruits of knowledge. You're still human in part. And he, like, has this big villainous monologue to them. And talks about, like, you could have lived for an eternity, but instead now you cannot escape the fate of death, just like everyone else. It's like this big, giant thing as Fuyu-chan orders them to be shut down. And so he's like, you gave us a gift of civilization. And now he's like, on behalf of mankind, I thank you. So I'm like, so I'm guessing when Kaworu says that the King of Lilin, Gendo, he knows that Gendo's going to fuse with whatever that atom sample is or whatever it is. Okay. So he's acknowledging that. He's like, let death send your souls back to where they belong. It's like, okay, all right. And so then Gendo's like, the killing of God that you've all abandoned. Talks about all that and talks about how, like, everything is still going as planned. Our wishes have already been granted, whatever that amounts to. All is well now. The Father is in heaven. We wish for the complemented perfection of mankind and the purification of souls. And And so then, yeah, the EVA unit just, like, becomes this big angelic-looking thing. One of the surviving atoms has awakened. And Shinji's like, what's going on? And it's like, well, this big rainbow black hole is the fourth impact. Like, we just made things worse all over again. Is this my fault? Yes, it is! And Kaworu tells him it's not his fault. Kaworu is forgiving up until the very end. Kaworu is forgiving up until the very end. Shinji's like, what is all of this? And he's like, it's the fourth impact. He's like, it's starting ritual. It's what it is. And he looks so sad. Kaworu's like, yep. He's like, this is the end of the world. Like, we've kind of started it. And it's like all the EVA units. And he's like the choker on him. And he can't get to him because he put the barrier up there. I do like that there's a symbolism that when he separated himself from Kaworu, he put a barrier between them so they can't be together anymore. And yeah. And then they just get hit by the ship! They just get hit by the ship. That part's amazing. The ship just completely collides with them and is just like all speed ahead. What the hell? Like the ship just completely collides with them. It's kind of amazing. And then yeah. Masato's like, we're just going to blast straight through him to try to stop this fourth impact from happening. Masato's like, I love you, Shinji, but we got to keep everybody else alive. And so, yeah, then there's this big battle. Like, Rei's trying to combine with the ship. Asuka's fighting Rei. We get in all that. And then I like that both Asuka and Rei just eject themselves from the EVAs in the end. They, like, go on their own path. One thing I don't like, I'm going to just say it. I don't like the beast mode. I don't fully get it. I don't quite like it. I feel like I liked in the first movie it was an explanation that Mari was giving to like abandoning your humanity inside the EVA and letting it just run wild and rampant. But it just feels kind of like, it feels too shonen for EVA. It feels too like shown. It feels like something that you would see happen like Naruto or something, or Bleach or something. Like they were going into beast mode, and I'm like, no, I don't like it because the EVAs are already like monstrous anyway. Why do they need to be more monstrous? And it like growing a tail and stuff. I'm like, I don't like it. It's just not for me. I'm just kind of like, It's just that part of it. It doesn't logically fit. I feel. I don't know. I do like the fact that Asuka has like the one eye is green like Mari, but the other one is blue. Kind of angelic, interesting. But then yeah, they both eject themselves as they like devour each other. And then Kaworu, I like that Shinji's like, well, this is all my fault. And I love that he's just sitting there with the barrier between them. And Shinji's like, I messed up. I done goofed. And of course, Kaworu's like, it's not your fault. It happened because I became the 13th angel. Which, there's a part of it that's like, yeah, it is Shinji's fault that all this is happening. But then there's the other part that, like, Kaworu kind of led him to this point. Kaworu, like, got him to this point, too. So, Kaworu's like, all this is happening because I became the 13th angel. So I couldn't help it. But I'm like, didn't Kaworu know that was a possibility? Didn't he? Didn't he know going into this that he was the first angel, so it was possible he could become an angel again? Doesn't make sense to me. He's like, I was the trigger, not you. But I'm like, Shinji, technically, even though you were the trigger, Shinji picked up the gun, so it's like, what? He's like, tell me what I should do. Ugh. And he doesn't say anything. I'm like, why can't we have nice things? Why can't we have nice things? Because he's like, what should I do? And he's like, Kaworu-kun, what should I do? Ugh. And he's just like, even if your soul disappears, your wishes and curses remain in this world. And he's like, your will roams the world as information and gradually changes. And I love that as he's saying this, it's like he's telling Shinji, he's like, I'm going to die. There's nothing you can do about it. And Shinji slowly just like collapses and crumbles. Yep. And he's like, eventually your own self is altered. It's like his final words to him. And it's so sad. It's so sad. I hate it. It's like, he's like, no matter what happens, he's like, I'll still be here in the end. Like, he's like, eventually, he's like, even if I go, like, it'll be okay. Like, I hate it. Because you can tell Shinji's just so sad about it. Like, just, I hate him, like, rubbing his head up against the screen. Nope. He's like, I'm sorry. This wasn't the happiness you desired. Like, he just looks so sweet there. He's like, I'll close the doors of Guff, and you don't have to worry. He's like, I'll make it to where this impact doesn't end up happening. If I go... And he's like, I don't understand what you're talking about. And he just looks so beautiful. Like, his hair is, like, so perfectly animated. Like, show, why'd you have to do this? And then, but here's the thing. He stabs himself again. So, he's like, you just need to find peace in a place of your own. But I feel like this is happening all over again, right? So, here's the thing. He stabs himself again. But that's what happened. That's what's so confusing is that when we found Lilith with him and the spears at the start, he was in the same pose. Like, he'd done that. It was almost like he combined himself with Lilith and stabbed himself to separate Shinji and Rei from that, to stop the impact from happening. And now he's doing it again. So my biggest confusion is, if that's the case, then when he saw Lilith with the Mach 6 and the spears, why didn't he remember that that's what happened, if it's happened before? Why? Oh. And that animation of Shinji, like, gasping for breath is really well done. Like, just, ugh. And he's like, fate will guide you. I'm like, to what? To what point? He's like, don't look at me like that. We'll meet again, Shinji-kun. Oh my gosh, no! And then he just blows up! Why can't we have nice things? Why can't we have nice things? Like, just, ugh. Yep, nope. I hate it. I hate it. I was like, Kaworu, why did you have him die a second time? We didn't need to see this again. This could have all been avoided. I'm like, ugh. I was like, I did not need to see that. Nope. I hate it. And then the big blood splatter. This will surely not traumatize Shinji forever. Surely not. Nope. And so then, yeah, Shinji's just sitting there, like, crying. And then this is the part where I hated Mari. I did not like Mari at all. When he's grieving over the one solid relationship he had in this movie. He's grieving over the loss of that one solid relationship. And Mari's like, quit being a crybaby. Save the princess. You're a man, aren't you? And I'm like, Mari, she's like, oh, while you're at it, learn how the world works. And I'm like, who are you? It's like, I hate you right now. When Mari's like, be a man. Quit whining over him. Save this girl that tried to punch you earlier. Learn how the world works. I'm like, the fuck are you? What the hell? And then, yeah, Kaworu disappears. Yeah, didn't like Mari in that moment. I was like, any goodwill I'd established towards Mari at that point, I kind of just lost it. And then, yeah, everything closes. Mount Fuji's destroyed. The world, like, there's this big, giant crater again. And Fuyu's like, look at this mess! Again, self-referential. And they're like, everything went as Seal had intended. And they're like, well, we got rid of Kaworu, and we guided Unit 13 to its awakening. We did those things. Now we're just, like, on platforms together in the bare bones of the bare bones. And Gendo's like, don't worry. It's still... Katsuragi's actions were within expectations. This'll do for now. It's all within expectation. So they bring back Mari and Asuka's units. No sign of the angel. They have Shinji back, the hull back. And then Ritsuko's like, we don't know who did it, but the fourth impact was stopped. Well, it was Kaworu. This should be good enough for now. Which makes me think that Ritsuko's on to something. Ritsuko's still with Gendo, right? And so then Asuka comes out and finds Shinji in the entry plug. I do like this scene. I do like that Asuka, she like calls him a brat. And she's like, you didn't come and help me. I'm like, why would he have? Why would he have? He's sitting there grieving. And she's just like, well, you only thought of yourself as usual. You figured you'd get away with it and stayed quiet. I was like, she just kind of gets mad at him and yells at him. But what I do like is that she walks off and stops. And stops in her tracks and thinks about things. And she comes back. I do like that. I do like that she comes back to him. She kicks him. But she says, you're still such a baby. And even after all this time, you're still a troublesome brat. And she does take him with her. So it's a stretch. It's a start. She does start by like taking him with her and making the effort. She makes the conscious effort to connect to Shinji and make him go with her. And she's like, can you even stand on your own? I'm like, girl, she just lost somebody really important to her. And then Ray shows up and she's like, oh, it's you. Ray's like got her fanny pack ready to go on vacation. I'm like, oh, you must be one of the Aonami type models. And she's like, yep, I'm figuring out who I am. And so then she like decides, it shows like the levels, the L barrier density is too high here. They won't be able to come for us. Okay. So, and she even calls them Lilin. She's like, let's go somewhere where Lilin can pick us up. So even Asuka acknowledges humanity as Lilin. Interesting. And then she like decides to drag Shinji along. And she does grab his head and makes him come along. But he drops the tape recorder. And Ray looks down at it. Now the question is, did Ray pick it back up? She wasn't ordered to. She wasn't ordered to pick it back up. So did she or not? But then we have like Asuka dragging Shinji away. And the three of them are off to go get picked up again. And presumably we'll see what happens presumably with all of that in the last movie. Now the preview, I want to see the preview. So, because the preview showed us nothing from this other preview. So we didn't get any subtitles with it either. So we see the mothership being attacked by an angel. Okay. Masato has her arm injured. Okay. There's like all these prototype EVA units that all look like they all look like Ray's unit, are all the clones of Ray gonna like pilot EVAs? Okay. And we see like the second O2 unit. Asuka has like a white suit on, and then Mari has a suit on. Shinji has his old suit back. Okay. And he's back with the EVA 01 unit. But that's interesting because like, how does that work? Because the 01 unit is the engine. And then we see like a tying of we see the 01 unit, the original one. We see all these different units here. What? How are we doing this? And it came out in 2021. So, yeah. Okay. I've talked for nearly 3 hours. I thought going into this movie, I sat down, I was like, oh, this will be simple. It's only an hour and a half. It's 30 minutes less than the second one, so I won't have that much to say. Right. Yeah, I took a ton of screen caps to share in the Discord, but yeah, so, So yeah, so I'm again, just like with the second rebuild, I'm really torn. The parts that I liked about this rebuild are probably the parts I've liked the most out of the whole series. All the stuff with the piano duet, the stuff with Fuyu-chan. I do like the course correcting that we do in making Yui Ayanami, and we come out clearly and say that Rei is clones of Shinji's mom. So we come out and say that. We get all of that. I like Mari and Asuka's relationship working together. There's parts that I'm still like, I don't logically... And I know what people will say. They're like, well, the movie's meant to stand on its own. But I'm like, even if it stands on its own, there are parts that plot-wise don't logically make sense. And I feel like even in the original series, where there was a lot of abstract moments that a lot of people might be like, oh, that's abstract and weird. I still feel like even in the abstract moments, there was enough explained to where you got it, right? Here, I feel like there's parts missing. And there's information that has not been shared with us, the audience, yet, which is exciting because that means that maybe in the next film it will be shared. And I don't want to be spoiled by that. So for Thrice Upon a Time, I am excited to see what that looks like. But having said that, I'm like, if we don't get certain answers, I'm going to be like, well, then what? And then, yeah, at the very end, the collar thing is the biggest plot contrivance to me. Just destroy it. Why didn't you destroy the collar? Why didn't you just destroy the collar? And maybe the entire time Kaworu thought that he eventually could become an angel and he'd have to destroy himself. Maybe he thought that from the start and thought it was a possibility and said, you know what, I'll just hope that doesn't happen, but I'm just sad that the series had to kill him again. We can't let Shinji just have a nice relationship with Kaworu. I am going to be a little frustrated if they try to shoehorn in a relationship with Asuka in this without it being earned. Because again, obviously now Rei and Shinji, that ship has sank now that we know that for sure Rei is a clone of Yui. That romantic relationship is gone. They can still be friends and still have a relationship that's very caring and platonic, but like the romantic aspect's gone with Rei and Shinji. Kaoru's dead. He says they'll meet again though, so we'll see. And then with Asuka and Shinji, I feel like they're like on their way towards making a relationship, but it just doesn't feel earned yet. And I want, in the original series, the dynamic was much different and there was an earning to it. But here in these movies, we haven't earned it yet. And if you're going to have the movie stand on their own and be their own thing, then we got to earn it. So I'll wait and see what happens in Thrice Upon a Time. But I did like this movie a lot. Otherwise, I wouldn't have talked for 3 hours about it. I did like this movie a lot. There's some stuff. But yeah, I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below. If you make it through all of this insanity. I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below. And I remember back when I started the rebuilds, I'm like, I'm not going to spend as much time as my end of Evangelion review about them. Here we are. But I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Please take care. And I am going to take a break next week. We're not doing Thrice Upon a Time next week. I'm going to do something different. We're going to take a little break. And then we'll do Thrice Upon a Time the week after next. I need a week to process all of this before we go into the last film. All right? And then we still have the manga. So, but in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'll be back next week at least with some more Neon Genesis Evangelion. Bye.